Meeting will come to order. We are now holding our regularly scheduled meeting held March 24th, 2009, 9 a.m. At this time, I'd like to call on Steve Jones, minister of Vero Beach Christian Church, to give the invocation, and the Pledge of Allegiance will be given by Commissioner Bob Solari. Please rise.
Our Father in heaven, these are great days for leadership. Your word says that when the leaders take the lead and the people follow, praise the Lord. We ask God your blessing on the discussion and the decisions that are made today. And may you bless this meeting and these leaders with wisdom and integrity. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Reverend Jones, and appreciate you coming down and giving us the invocation. At this time, we have some additions to the agenda. We have an additional emergency item, County Administrator's Matters, item 11A. And just so the public knows, Mr. Baird, would you just give the public a heads up on exactly what that is, just in case somebody would like to come down and speak about that? Your microphone, please.
That item is where St. Helens is asking for the use of Dodgertown for the midnight mass. I mean, the early sunrise mass. Okay.
All right, and then we have a deletion of 10B1, which is the public discussion item by Hollis Hoyer, has been asked to be pulled from the agenda. Any other additions or corrections? Commissioners?
Move to approve the agenda as amended.
Thank you. We've got a motion from Commissioner O'Brien to approve the agenda as amended, and a second from Commissioner Flesher. No discussion. We'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The motion passes unanimously. Moves us to the proclamations and presentations. At this time, I'll be giving the proclamation, a presentation of proclamation for the Guardian Ad Litem, and Patricia Dodd, Assistant Director for the Guardian Ad Litem program, will be receiving. Ms. Dodd, welcome. Please come up. Whereas the Guardian Ad Litem program is a partnership of community advocates and professional staff providing a powerful voice on behalf of Florida abused and neglected children. And whereas many children living in substitute care away from their families and need to have an independent advocate working on their behalf. And whereas 7,000 volunteers work tirelessly to provide that independent advocacy on behalf of dependent children around the state. And whereas over 5,200 children are still awaiting the appointment of a guardian ad litem. And whereas the state agency initiative has launched to raise awareness and increase the number of guardian ad litem volunteers within the state agencies. And whereas many partners in this remarkable initiative have committed to raising awareness of the program through a variety of methods, including hosting Guardian Ad Litem Month within their agencies this March, as well as through sharing the resources that highlight the importance of the program and the need for volunteers. And whereas March 25th is Guardian Ad Litem Day at the Capitol to give a voice to abused and neglected children, navigating a child welfare system that can be lonely and confusing, and honoring the Guardian Ad Litems working to ensure children do not get lost in the system. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County that the month of March be observed in Indian River County as Guardian Ad Litem Month, adopted this 24th day of March, 2009, signed by all 5 county commissioners. Thank you very much.
We're very excited about this, and we would like to thank you for your support and for Indian River County's support. And I have a volunteer from Indian River County. She'll help us.
I've been a volunteer guardian ad litem for about 14 years now in Indian River County, and I've recently joined the board of Guardians for New Futures, which is our nonprofit organization that supports the Guardian Ad Litem program. I have been working to promote awareness in Indian River County, and I want to thank you because this will do a great deal in helping with that cause.
And if somebody would like to be involved with the Guardian Ad Litem program, do you have a phone number where they could, or a website or something, whatever? This is a shameless opportunity for some...
They can call me directly.
That's fine. That's what
My name is Patra Dodd, and my direct line is 772 871-7225.
871-72.
225, and that's my direct line to my office.
That's great.
I'd like to make one other announcement
Yes,
as
ma'am.
well. The last Saturday of each month, I am at Starbucks on US 1 and 12th Street. Okay, that's right next to Publix. And I go in, I sit there, and Starbucks will serve free coffee to anybody that would like to talk to me and learn more about the program.
Oh, wonderful.
My name's Doris Plem, and if you would like to know more about the program, I meet you this Saturday at Starbucks.
The last Saturday of the month, every month. Well, thank you very much for your advocacy and having seen the Guardian Ad Litem program in place and working. It truly is comforting to know that, you know, in any situation you have this side and that side, but you're always on the children's side, and we certainly do appreciate that.
One more request, could we get a group picture?
Absolutely. Yes, yes, absolutely. You want to come up here? You want us to come? Where would you like? You want to come up here or us down here? Okay. Okay. All right. You want the chairs? Oh, here. Yes. Let's slide that out of the way. All right, Commissioners, slide the chair.
One, two, three. One, two, three.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for all your volunteering work.
Need to get that close to the light. Our next presentation is a proclamation designating March 29th, 2009 as Children's Day in Indian River County. Commissioner Wheeler.
Thank you, and I'd like to present that to Pat Houston, the Director of the Program Early Learning Coalition, to receive this. Thank you. Whereas the 14th Annual Children's Week celebrating parents and children will take place in Tallahassee from March 29, 2009 to April 5, 2009, bringing thousands of parents, children, professionals, policymakers, community leaders, and concerned citizens together to share the valuable knowledge and information about children's issues across the state and in our capital city. And whereas the purpose of the Children's Week is to create a shared vision of the state of Florida's commitment to its children and its families, and to engage in long-term process to develop and implement strategies for moving the shared vision forward. And whereas Children's Week has teamed up with over 80 leading statewide businesses and nonprofit organizations and hundreds of local organizations to expand the network of community involvement and education on a wide array of children and family issues at the local level, and conduct events and activities in March and April in all 67 counties, focusing on and imposing the health, safety, and well-being of Florida's children and families. And whereas, in recognition of April as Child Abuse Prevention Month, Prevent Children Abuse in Florida, in partnership with an Ounce of Prevention Fund and the Florida Department of Children and Families, is conducting a statewide public awareness and education campaign, Winds of Change, It's Your Turn, and is symbolized by the pinwheel, representing this shift in wind and change. Whereas hundreds of local municipalities have officially proclaimed Children's Day and hosted hundreds of events and public events and activities for parents and children in their community. Now therefore be proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County, Florida, that March 29th, 2009 be recognized and hereby declared as Children's Day in Indian River County. Thank you.
Thank you.
Would you like to
say a few words? Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to introduce our attendees. We have Jackie Jackson, our Executive Director, Cheryl Dunn, Board Member, Valerie Edwards, Board Member, and Cherie Marciniak, who is a staff member. I have an envelope for you with a little pin that says you can count on us for each of you, as well as my business card, because we invite all of you, if you're so inclined, to tour through a child care center in your area during Children's Week. We'd love to arrange that. Just call me and I'll make the arrangements if you're so inclined. And I wanted to introduce Jackie Jackson.
Good morning. I am the new Executive Director for the Early Learning Coalition of Indian River, Martin and Okeechobee counties, and I thank you very much. I accept this proclamation on all the children in our community, not just the ones that we serve. I will tell you, we serve approximately 1,500 children just in Indian River County. We have a wait list of over 500. So although these are difficult times, and we all know that they're difficult times, we are dedicated to serving as many children as possible to get them school ready. And we appreciate all the collaboration that you do with us, and certainly invite you to visit some of our preschools and invite you to visit our centers. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Pat. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Hi, how are you? Good morning. Thank you very much for all you're doing.
Wonderful to meet
I think you did a thing and a thing.
Our next proclamation is 5C, which is presentation of proclamation designating March 22nd, through the 28th, 2009 as Boys and Girls Club Week. Commissioner Solari?
Oh, Ronnie Hewitt and John Tavies are coming up to the dais, and it's a great pleasure to read this proclamation designating March 22nd through 28th, 2009 as Boys and Girls Clubs Week. Whereas the young people of Indian River County are tomorrow's leaders, and whereas many such young people need professional youth services to help them succeed in school and in life, and whereas the Boys and Girls Clubs of Indian River County provide services to more than 2,000 Indian River County young people at its current 3 clubhouses and through its Youth Volunteer Corps program, and will establish a clubhouse next year in Fellsmere, and whereas the Boys and Girls Clubs of Indian River County is at the forefront of efforts in providing our young people with positive self-identity, educational, employment, social, emotional, and cultural competencies, community involvement, health, well-being, and moral compass. And whereas the Boys and Girls Clubs of Indian River County helps ensure that our young people keep off the streets, offering them a safe and supportive place to go and providing them with quality programs. And whereas the Boys and Girls Clubs of Indian River County will celebrate National Boys and Girls Clubs Week 2009 along with some 4,500 clubs and more than 4 million young people nationwide. Now, whereas, be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County, Florida, that March 22nd through 28th, 2009 be officially recognized as Boys and Girls Clubs Week in Indian River County, and the Board recognizes and commends the Boys and Girls Clubs of Indian River County for their services to young people, adopted this 24th day of March 2009 and signed by all 5 members of the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County. Ronnie?
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Davis, Commissioners. On behalf of the 2,000 young people that the Boys and Girls Club serves each year, I want to thank you for this proclamation, and also want to invite all the citizens of Indian River County to visit one of our 2 clubhouses in Vero Beach or one in Sebastian during this week. We have a lot of special activities going on each day, and we'd like everybody to come by and just actually see all the great things that happen inside the walls of the Boys and Girls Club. At the Boys and Girls Club, helping kids succeed in school and life is our top priority, and I have a special young man I want to introduce today who is doing just that. To my left is John Tavius Matillas. John Tavius is a sophomore at Vero Beach High School, and he was just recently named our countywide Youth of the Year, and he will be moving on to our state competition in Orlando next month. So I want to call on John Tavius just to take a moment to share with you what the Boys and Girls Club means to him.
Thank you. The Boys and Girls Club is very important to me. They've helped me become responsible and given me a lot of opportunities. They've made it a fun learning experience through educated programs such as Passport to Manhood, Smart Moves, and Money Matters. And I appreciate everything they've done for me. I would like to say thank you for supporting us for our Boys and Girls Club Week.
Welcome, Chairman. If I may I had the pleasure of interviewing John Tavius and 2 others for that Youth of the Year. And when it talks about leadership here in the proclamation, it doesn't overstate anything. All 3 of those young men I think are a great example for our community, and I've got to congratulate John Tavius and the others for the work they've done. They've all overcome a number of hardships, and it's one of the things that make me feel good about the future of our community. Thank you, John Tavius.
Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Just while you were still standing up, I'd like to take a picture now.
Oh, it's a good flash.
It was. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, our next proclamation is a presentation designating March 22nd to 28th, 2009 as Sharps Disposal Awareness Week. Commissioner O'Brien.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Cheryl Dunn and Himanshu Mehta will be accepting this proclamation. Proclamation designating March 22nd through 28th, 2009 as Sharps Disposal Awareness Week. Whereas the Indian River County Solid Waste Disposal District and the Indian River County Health Department Environmental Health Division are partnering to ensure that residents have a safe and convenient way to dispose of their used sharps. And whereas sharps are defined as items having the potential to puncture or cut the skin and include hypodermic needles, syringes, and lancets. And whereas sharps can be contaminated with hepatitis, HIV/AIDS, and other fatal diseases, and whereas sharps clog sewers and lift stations, end up at recycling centers among cans and plastics, puncture solid waste containers, placing workers at risk along collection routes and at landfills, and threaten public safety. And whereas residents bring a sharps container home, place it out of reach of children, perform injections as needed, and dispose of syringes completely intact into the sharps container, not snapping off the needles or recapping. And whereas when a sharps container is full to the indicator line, permanently close the top and return it to our participating disposal site and exchange it for a new sharps container at Indian River County Health Department, at Indian River County Landfill, or one of the 5 customer convenience centers, Roseland, Fellsmere, Winter Beach, Gifford, and Oslo. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County, Florida, that the week of March 22nd through 28th, 2009, be observed as Sharps Disposal Awareness Week to heighten understanding of proper sharps collection and disposal, ensuring that residents have a safe way to dispose of sharps, and knowing to never put sharps containers in the recycle bins or trash. Adopted this 24th day of March 2009, signed by all 5 county commissioners. And Himanshu, you want to add to that, please?
Sure. Good morning, Commissioners. Himanshu Mehta, Solid Waste Disposal District. Thank you for the proclamation. It's always an honor to partner with Cheryl and the Health Department to bring awareness to such an important issue to our community. This is the sharps container that we're talking about. This is free to all Indian River County residents, and as you indicated, is available at the Health Department, at the landfill, and at our 5 customer convenience centers. And this today in the newspaper, we have this flyer that's come out. I've given you a copy of each. We're going to post some flyers here, also on the outside lobby, and also on our website. Residents can also call us at the landfill at 770-5112 for more information. Thank you.
Himanshu, when they come in to get the container, do they have to bring a prescription for like insulin or anything, or they just say, I need a container?
No, they just need a proof of residency, that they are resident.
Proof of residency is what they need to bring. Okay.
We don't ask any questions.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Great.
Good morning,
Thank you.
Cheryl. Okay.
In addition to that, there's also a radio campaign, and we've gotten an overwhelming response, let alone on Monday. I guess it must have ran over the weekend. And I want to thank you all for making this possible for us to bring awareness to the community and keep people safe.
Thank you,
Thank
Cheryl.
you.
Thank you much.
You're a regular coming up here. Good job, Marsha. You guys want a picture?
He's got a lot of pictures.
Our next presentation will be the proclamation designated March 2009 as Meals on Wheels Month, and Commissioner Flesher will be reading the proclamation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Karen Deagle. She'll be receiving this proclamation. I have the distinct pleasure and honor of presenting this proclamation designating March 2009 as Meals on Wheels Month. Whereas the Meals on Wheels program of the Senior Resource Association provides hot, nutritious meals, a daily visit, and other support that enable homebound senior citizens to remain independent and living in their own homes for as long as possible. And whereas the Meals on Wheels volunteers delivered more than 50,000 meals in the past year to homebound seniors in the Indian River County. And whereas volunteer drivers for Meals on Wheels are the backbone of this program, and through their dedication to bring not only hot, nutritious meals to homebound seniors, but also caring, concern, and attention to their well-being. And whereas Meals on Wheels program and services across Indian River County increase awareness and encourage action on the important issues surrounding independent living and senior nutrition, and whereas Meals on Wheels program and services bring together federal, state, and local government funding, foundations, corporations, families, and community organizations for the sole purpose of providing nutrition, hope, and independence in the Indian River County's homebound seniors. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County, Florida, that March 2009 be designated as Meals on Wheels Month in Indian River County, adopted this 24th day of March 2009, signed by all 5 county commissioners.
Thank you very much, Commissioners. On behalf of the Senior Resource Association and all the volunteers in the Meals on Wheels program, we appreciate this proclamation and the support that you've given us. This program is a very important program in our community. It provides essential, needed nutrition to individuals who can't get out of their home. And it's my pleasure to introduce to you Kathy Knowles, who is my nutrition manager.
Thank you. And I would really like to thank you once again for providing the funding for our new vehicle, which allows us to get Meals on Wheels out to the homebound seniors in Fellsmere. We're now delivering 30 meals every day. The people in Fellsmere can get a hot meal, the daily check that's so important, thanks to you. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Last week, I had the opportunity to ride along with one of our volunteers in the program, Mr. Joe Booth, and I have to tell you that it was an extremely warming experience, and it had nothing to do with the warm food. And the amount of time and dedication that he, I'm sure as well as many of the other volunteers do, the contact was phenomenal, and I realize that there are about 50 volunteers at this point, and you're probably in the continuing need of additional volunteers and restaffing as the program may grow. So I'd like for you to take this opportunity to let the folks know where they can volunteer for this rewarding experience, and I'd like to encourage everyone else to see if they can do a ride-along, just to see what this program truly means to the seniors that are out there.
Great. And anybody who'd like to volunteer can call me directly at 794-1142. We'll do an orientation and training, takes about an hour, and then set them up to do a ride-along, maybe with Joe again. And it's a wonderful opportunity. People can be a permanent volunteer. They can volunteer 1 day a week, or they can be a substitute volunteer, whatever fits their schedule.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sean.
Yes, I'll see you then. Thank you. No picture, we'll just applaud. You want a picture?
Our next presentation will be a presentation of water supply assessment. for the Southern Water Supply Planning Area by the St. Johns River Water Management District. I believe Mr. Hornsby will be presenting. Mr. Hornsby, welcome. Just stand there and it magically comes up somewhere.
All right.
I don't
I like
know
magic.
It works that way for everybody else. Actually, I think right here on this computer. Yes, sir. And then if we could have somebody come down and see to it that we're able to get this thing fired up.
Here comes the PowerPoint master himself.
Oh, yes, guru right here. There you go. It looks like he's getting close.
Thank you for your time. I'll try to do it very briefly. I'm here to give you an update, an overview of the 2008 water supply assessment, and to inform you of the upcoming water supply planning process that will occur in this area. And I'm going to have to bridge between the two.
There's actually a microphone right there if you'd like to sit down.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Just hit the green button on the microphone. Right. Yes. There you go.
All right. Thank you. Quickly, we're going to go over the statutory requirements that the water management has to do to perform the water supply assessment, water supply planning. The water supply assessment designates priority water resource caution areas, go over the tools that we use in the water supply assessment, and then inform you of the upcoming water supply planning process for the 2010 plan. Under Chapter 373, the district is required to do a water supply assessment, water supply plan. We update it every 5 years per the statute. What we do is we predict existing and projected water uses through our planning horizon, which is a 20-year planning horizon, which this one is 2030, so we're planning out to the 2030 planning horizon. We identify existing and proposed sources of water and conservation efforts, and the ultimate goal of the water supply assessment is to identify areas where the projected demand cannot be met through existing water supply. And if it does not, or it trips environmental criteria, causes harm, or has groundwater, saltwater intrusion interaction, we designate those areas priority water resource caution areas, and that targets our water supply planning efforts. And as I said, we're doing a 20-year planning horizon for our planning process, which we will be starting shortly. It's a public process. We coordinate with local water supply entities, the local governments, other affected parties, and the ultimate goal of our water supply planning process is in these priority water resource caution areas, identify water to meet the projected need to the planning horizon. Also to identify funding sources as part of it. We used to have the Water Sustainability and Protection Trust Fund. As you know, that's been hit. Hopefully as the economy comes back, that'll come back. From our assessment, this is what we're projecting to be our potential and priority water caution areas in our district. The orange area is what is always, or has been in the last two assessments, our priority water resource caution area, the Central Florida area. You may have heard of something called the Central Florida Coordination Area. This is that region, and we are still projecting it to be a priority water resource caution area in this assessment. What is new is the areas that you see in yellow with the black diagonal lines in the north and the south. These we're designating as potential priority caution areas. And what that means is based on our assessment, they meet the criteria of a potential of a priority water resource caution area. But since this is the first time we're designating those as, or potentially designating those as priority water resource caution areas, we're going to take those into the planning process and workshop those more with the local governments, because being in a priority water resource caution area does bring along some additional work for the public utilities. For example, they have to do facility work plans that have to go through the Department of Community Affairs. So we want to work with everybody, bring everybody up to speed of what we use, go through our population projections, and go through our methodology that we used. And as part of our water supply assessment, we use water use data. We use water use data from 1995 to 2005 as our base, and then we projected forward on 5-year increments to 2030. We input this data into our groundwater models, and we use the groundwater models to do changes in the Florida aquifer and superficial aquifers from 1995 as our base year to 2030, and see the change in the groundwater levels. And then we have a series of water resource constraints that we look at. Most are GIS-based models to look at changes, those changes in groundwater levels, how they will impact the natural system, like drawdowns under wetlands, impacts to MFLs in the region, which in this case are not, but mainly wetlands in this region is the one that was tripped. But just kind of show you some of the things we look at is population increase from 1995 to 2030. And we're going to talk about I'm going to focus on what we're calling the southern planning area, which is the 3 counties listed here. We're projecting a 96% increase for those 3 counties from 1995 to 2030. But we're also increasing a public supply population increase of 122%. And what that translates into water use, though, is there's actually a negative for the 3 counties, of negative almost 19% decrease in water use. It's primarily due to agricultural reductions. But public supply is still projected to increase by 122% in water use. So as ag is decreasing, public supply is coming online. And just to kind of give you some of the utilities that we have in the southern planning area, they're listed here on the map. And for Indian River County, there are 3 major ones. And from our groundwater models, we get what's called projected changes in the Florida aquifer from 1995 to 2030. I'm going to focus on the southern end of the district. And you see in Indian River County, you'll see the light purple and darker purples. In the center of that circle, we see up to 5 feet of decline in the Florida aquifer due to groundwater, which are projected groundwater withdrawals. And that translates into potential impacts that we use as our water resource constraint. For Indian River County, the one that tripped was an impact to native vegetation, impact to wetlands. We saw that these drawdowns beneath these wetlands, based on our data, would potentially impact these wetlands, causing them to dry out and changing the vegetative community. So what the district has done is divide the district into 3 planning areas. The central one is the planning area that has been a priority water resource caution area and will continue to be, and then the northern, which is a potential priority water resource caution area now, and the southern. And we will begin our planning process shortly. And part of the planning process is to review the projected water resource impacts, to finalize these caution areas, take them from potential to priority water resource caution area, and that will complete our assessments, which will become an appendices to the water supply plan. And then we're going to identify the strategies to prevent these projected impacts to come into fruition. And we're working with, and that will start with our water supply planning process. In the planning process, as we said, it is a public process. We will be working with the local governments in the area, the public utility, multi-jurisdictional entities, self-suppliers, and other affected and interested parties. And for this region, our kickoff meeting is May 15th of 2009. I believe it's actually going to be held here at 9:30. And if you have any questions.
Commissioners, any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple, please. When you talk about the increase in the public supply, really what you're saying is the utility districts are just drilling more wells and we have more available water, but we're not really truly getting more water supply. Is that correct? I mean, we're just putting more straws in the aquifer, so we have more available, but we're not really getting more water.
Well, we're projecting that you're going to have more people to serve, so you need more water to serve them.
Right, but if the aquifer is declining, we're not increasing the water supply. We're just tapping it more. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we're just putting in more wells to drill more water out.
Yes,
okay. The central area, I guess at least 5 years ago, is identified as a priority area.
Yes, sir.
What active steps has St. John's taken then to address that, other than it's back in that same category again?
Okay. In that area, it actually is due to the 3 water management districts coming together, Southwest and South Florida. They've designated what's called the Central Florida Coordination Area. And what they've done is, through rule, established that the sustainable limit of the Florida aquifer is the 2013 allocations. So they've established how much water is available, and based on that, that's how much through 2013 is available. So there is no new groundwater allocation after 2013. So they've basically tied the line at that. And what we're doing is actively identifying alternative water supply projects for people to go and develop, such as the St. Johns River, which I'm sure you've read about.
Right. Okay. Okay. And then my last question is, I guess I thought I read somewhere that St. John's is considered an application for a bottled water plant. Is that correct?
I believe there is a cup in-house for Lake County, for a company called Niagara Bottled Water. and that has been challenged, and I believe it's still in the administrative phase.
Okay, how many gallons of water daily would that CUP?
It was a little less than 500,000 a day.
Okay, and where is Niagara Water? Is that New York, I take it?
I don't know the exact location. No, I don't believe it is a Florida company, no.
Okay, is Lake County in the central area?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let me get this straight then. That's a priority conservation area, and you've limited the amount of water available, but then you're saying we're going to give it to an out-of-state bottling company to pump into that water and take it out of Florida. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. So go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
I believe that Ms. Ecker would like to
Thank you. Thanks to St. John's River Management District, they did put this report up on their web, so I had a chance to go through this before your presentation. And the purpose of my asking to speak to you is that I would like to draw your board's attention to questions which it seems to me that you and your staff might want to have answered before this report is finalized, because what has been presented is a draft, as you know. And here are the questions that came to me going through this report. One is that the report projects Indian River County having an increase in its public water supply consumption, as you saw from one of the statistics which he displayed. By the way, their charts go from 2010 to 2050. But in their overall chart, and I've documented here which tables I'm referring to, it shows a decrease in water. Presumably, and actually as was stated, the offset is because of the decline in acreage of agriculture. But what are the forecasters' assumptions about what is going to happen to this land between 2010 and 2050? Apparently, they're assuming that it would just be fallow. I think that's something that you or your staff should follow through with the forecasters. Secondly, the southern portion of Brevard County and all of Indian River County were excluded from the district's recently modified groundwater flow model. The forecast for our county is based on an entirely different model. I wonder, are there implications about the forecast accuracy between these two models? And I think we should know more about the difference between those models and how they might influence the forecast for our county. Third question, by the way, I have 5. The report assumes that withdrawals from groundwater sources will not increase after 2013. You heard him just say that after that time, alternative sources have to be sought. Yet the assumption on which the projections are made is that water will be coming from groundwater resources, except in certain limited circumstances. I assume there's a good explanation for this, but this is a seeming contradiction, and I think we all might want to have that clarified. There's really an alarm here when we hear him say that 2013 is the closure. That's only 4 years from now. Water resource supplies take a long time to be planning for. And are we really on top of what those alternatives are? I think we need to look at that. The forecast for public water supply used in this is only for the geographic areas covered currently by a public distribution system. The forecaster's assumption is that areas outside public supply will remain as domestic self-supply. Does that mean that there was no forecast for water use for the possible population increase for the land area that is now agriculture? It sounds like it. We need to pursue that. This could be a serious shortcoming in the forecast for our county. Fifth, rainfall and climate in general are important factors in any water supply and use forecast, yet the forecasters in this report give it short shrift. A, the forecasts use average rainfall, but for what years? I don't see anything average about what has been happening, and I've been following the hydrological reports that are put up on the web by the Geological Services. The report discusses decade-long climate aberrations, which are called AMOs, but they reject them as a factor in their forecasts. Is this reasonable? Considering recent and current weather patterns, I think we need to check up on that and challenge that. Sea level rise. Here's another factor. The forecasters just simply dismiss this. They assume that their estimate of only 1 foot in 100 years is simply too small to be a factor. Yet accelerated melts in the polar zones are being documented, and forecasts that we're now hearing are 3 feet in 100 years. For our county, right here on the Atlantic, this could be a serious issue. We really need, again, here's another issue I'd like to have you and your staff check out. The use of average rainfall, when the trend is so contrary, also suggests to me that attempting tables and having tables that forecast out to 2050 may not be such a great idea. I was pleased to see here that they're talking only about the next 20 years, but their tables actually go out to 2050. We know that providing public water supplies require long lead times, but an unrealistic forecast period is really not helpful. Finally, the report states that unacceptable water resource conditions should not occur because of the safeguards incorporated in the district's CUP or CUP system. I don't know. Do you know what these safeguards are? Or how are they likely to affect us? Will the Department of Community Affairs at some point be obligated to deny applications for development if our county's prospective demands exceed the limits of the district's CUP safeguards? We need to know what those are. Perhaps others do, but they're not. It was just passed over as a statement, and yet it's a very important point as far as our county's planning. And in conclusion, it's my hope that your board and your good staff will use this time period, and I was happy to hear all the openness to have some exchange of comment, to use this period between the draft and the final assessments to actively engage in questioning and fact sharing, so the final product will give our county practical guidelines for providing for our water supplies. Thank you for allowing me a chance to comment.
Thank you, Ms. Eckern. If you would, if you have an extra copy of the...
Yes, I do.
What I'll do is I'll distribute that to staff and then also the commissioners as well as to Mr. Hornsby.
I will turn them over to your clerk.
That sounds great, and then we'll see to it that you get the answers.
Thank you again for allowing me to speak.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
I'd just like to make one clarification.
Sure.
The 2013 does not apply to you guys. You are not in the Central Florida coordination area. That would be part of the planning process, is to actually determine when that water resource constraint will be tripped. And my guess is it's much further into the future, but that's why we start the planning process as early as we do this identification. But yes, it does take about 10 years to get a water supply project online.
Okay. And Mr. Hornsby, if you don't mind, I don't know if you have a card or anything, but I would like it if you could give it to the clerk. That way I can take and see to it that you get a copy of Ms. Ecker's questions to be able to try to respond.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Any other comments, commissioners?
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Our next item is presentation for Children's Services Advisory Committee by Leslie Spurlock, Healthy Start of Indian River County. Welcome.
I am Brad Bernauer, Director of Children's Services Advisory Committee. We're representing the most important natural resource for Indian River County, and that's the children of this county. And I did see a sign. I was driving somewhere, I can't remember where it was, but a sign said, "It's less expensive to train a child than it is to fix an adult." Just something to think of in our budget planning. I'd like to introduce Leslie Spurlock, the Director for Healthy Start.
Good morning. Thank you for having us here. The Indian River Healthy Start Coalition is very thankful for the support and the funding that comes from the Children's Services Advisory Council and this commission. Our mission is to provide a system in this county that ensures that all women have prenatal care and that all children have services and access to those services that promote their normal growth and development. I feel as if our mutual goal is to eliminate factors which impede children's mental, emotional, or physical development. The need is that parents are the ones who, if they are unable to cope, create a condition that is unacceptable for a newborn's well-being. How do we do this in Indian River County? The Healthy Start Coalition has 5 different programs, 2 of which are funded by the Children's Services Advisory Committee. TLC Newborn is one of them. TLC works with all parents to help them cope with their newborn. They visit parents and newborns in the hospital. We actually are in there for 6 days a week. TLC teaches parents how to calm their babies with the Happiest Baby on the Block calming methods. And they send an age-appropriate newsletter to every parent for the first year of the baby's life. During that first year of life, they're also available by telephone and also by the internet. We have a blog and an internet group that parents can access. We also do this through Healthy Families. Healthy Families focuses on teaching appropriate positive interaction among families who have been assessed at risk for abuse or neglect of their children. The program provides intensive home visitation for up to 186 families for a minimum of 3 years. Last year, Healthy Families helped 338 children in the county. Not only do they provide this service for the target child, but other children in the home benefit as well. TLC Newborn serves about 87% or over 1,200 families, parents of newborns in the county every single year. The babies and parents are of every age and every race and every ethnicity. On average, this county has over 420 newborns every year. Our achievements are 186 families make a commitment to participate for a minimum of 3 years in Healthy Families. The families last year, we graduated 37 families and their children from the program. And then 100% of families completing this program have had no child maltreatment reports within 1 to 2 years after completing the program. TLC actually helped 718 babies whose parents became clients. 86% of those, or 617, said they were better able to meet their baby's needs because of TLC Newborn. 49% of families in TLC, 352, called for help and received that guidance and support. Because of our partnership with you, high-risk families receive risk-appropriate care and interventions from Healthy Families to eliminate child abuse and neglect. And then all families have access to the positive evidence-based parenting information that promotes the understanding of infant growth and development from TLC. Well, what if we did not have your support? Healthy Families is required to have local match, and it could not be met without you. Funds would decrease further because without that match, our money from the state is not received. 2 or 3 staff will be cut, and 50 to 75 families would be at greater risk of abusing or neglecting their children. TLC could possibly use 3 to 4 long-time staff and a service that provides a safety net for all parents. I'd really like to thank you again for all the support that you have, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Commissioners, any questions?
No, just sounds like you're doing a wonderful job, and please keep it up.
Thank you. Thank you very much. With your help, we hope to do so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioners, that concludes the proclamations and presentations. Now it moves us on to the approval of the minutes for the regular meeting held February 3rd, 2009.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion from Commissioner Wheeler and second from Commissioner O'Brien. No discussion. We'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The motion passes unanimously. Next, we have the Economic Summit Workshop, February 5th, 2009.
Move approval.
Got a motion from Commissioner Solari and a second from Commissioner O'Brien. No discussion. We'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. The information portion of the agenda, and now to the consent agenda. Commissioners, anything you'd like to have pulled?
Yes, Commissioner, I'd like to pull item H, please.
Item H, as in Harry.
Yes, sir.
Anything else, Commissioners? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Move
for the
approval of consent as amended.
Got a motion from Commissioner O'Brien to approve the consent agenda as amended, and a seconded by Commissioner Fletcher. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Item H, Commissioner Solari.
Mr. Chairman, I was just wondering about this, that we evidently had a contract to purchase a piece of property because of the right-of-way program we have along 66th Avenue. As part of the original purchase, as I understand it, we allowed the tenant to stay there for a period of time, but now evidently there's a request to stay an additional year. And the rent for it's essentially, as I see it, $12 a year. And to me, that seems to be a gift to the person who's making the request. And I don't quite understand how the commission can make a gift of that magnitude to a private citizen.
And I guess I'll kind of weigh in on this. The way I see it is if you want to call it a gift, I disagree. County coming along and buying somebody's homestead and their property of a young family, or just any family. It was a part of the negotiations as far as the price, so we didn't have to go through any eminent domain process. It was a settlement that was made earlier, and if I'm not mistaken, in that language, he had the opportunity to renew the lease if we deemed appropriate.
Okay, if that was part of the original contract, fine, but I didn't see that here.
Yes, and I did not go back and read the language again, Commissioner, but it was not atypical of the other purchases that we did make.
And I understand that we often grant leases as part of it.
Yes.
But this, as I read the backup, wasn't the case here. We gave a lease for a period of time, and now an additional period of time is requested. So, I mean, if this was part of the original contract, I'm happy with it.
The lease, the ability for them to lease was.
For the first year.
Yes.
But as I understand, this is the second year.
Usually, I think normally they've been renewable, haven't they? Well,
yeah, and I didn't memorize the contract to say exactly whether it
wouldn't have expected you would.
Yes, Mr. Moore.
Yes, Chris Moore, Assistant Public Works Director. Commissioner Solari is correct. It was only for a 1-year period. We purchased the property September of last year for $250,000, offered the lease back at $1 a month, and the tenant now is asking for an extension. Staff didn't have any difficulty with it because we don't plan on beginning that road project in that time period, so we simply we're offering to extend it at the same rate of $1 a month. But that would be the board's prerogative if they want to change the conditions of the lease back.
Somebody refresh my memory. I thought that these were options that we've talked about where they could renew the lease. I know we've done that on some of them. I don't know if on this particular one or not, but I think we should be consistent if we've done it on some. I don't know.
Yeah, and the poignant question that I think is basically it was a 1-year lease back from the county, and nothing in there about with an option to renew the lease or to extend. But that's what we're asking for. That's what they're asking for at this point, correct. And that's what Commissioner Solari would like to. He's questioning that, but ultimately, what would you like to see?
I don't. As I see it, would essentially be a gift to this citizen. So I think we have to charge some rent for the additional year.
Okay. Do you have a figure in mind?
Well, there's the backups that we got had a market rent of $700 to $750. I can understand why I would give a discount to that. First of all, because if the county got a realtor involved, there's a fee of about 10%, and to make it quick and easy, I wouldn't mind another 10% on top of that. So if I were to give a figure, I'd round it out to about $500 a month, and at this time give an option to renew it for another year if the Public Works Department has no use for it. But that would probably be that would be my recommendation, is $500 a month for the year with the option to renew it if the parties agree.
Okay.
I don't know if I didn't pose my question well enough, but it seems like when we've sat here, we've talked about it, at least verbally, that people could lease their property for a year, and we give them so much time to get out after that if necessary, and that we also indicated, at least in conversation here, that they'd have that option basically until the road was built. That may be inaccurate, but I'm going from memory and conversation we've had at this board. And I think, at least from my perspective, that's the message we've been sending. Perhaps I'm mistaken, but
Well, it hasn't been part of it since I've been a commissioner, and I've been trying to get the staff to present the lease back as part of the overall package, because I think that that's a very valuable economic tool, and I think our obligation to the citizens require us to use that economic tool for the benefit of all citizens and not just the individual. Generally, with a lot of right-of-ways, we've been very generous, as we should be with eminent domain, to give premiums for the property and to not question hard second appraisals, which sometimes indicate a higher value to the land than our original appraiser. And I don't see how, with limited resources, we can continue to give away some of these resources. And in this case, we had a contract which both sides agreed to, and now an individual is asking for something in addition to that, and I think it's appropriate for this commission to ask something for that addition. Would
you like to put that in form of a motion?
I'll make the motion, and I won't be upset if nobody seconds it, but I think it's our obligation to represent all the citizens, so I'll make a motion that we extend the lease for $500 a month for the first year, and then grant a renewal to it, an option to renew for another $500 per month for whatever terms that the individual and staff think appropriate, whether it's month to month for that period of time on, or for another year.
Okay, Commissioner, we have a motion. Is there a second? Seeing none, motion dies for lack of a second. Do I have a motion?
Move staff recommendation.
Got a motion from Commissioner O'Brien, a second from Commissioner Fletcher. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Yes, sir.
One question, and I probably do. I would like to get a current update from staff on how many contracts we have pending that have been signed, haven't been paid for yet, or closed on. How many we've actually closed on, and how many more properties we need, and the numbers in all of them, and the cash amount spent and expected to spend.
Well, I can tell you when we did the John Jackson property a couple of weeks ago, we kind of tallied up where we were on that segment of 66th Avenue. Mr. Jackson's was the fourth of 64 properties that we needed on the segment of 66th Avenue from 57th Street north to Barber. He was number 4 of 64, so we still need 60 properties to go. We can get a tally of the acreage and the number that we presume will be hold takes and report that back to the board.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
Nay.
Motion passes 4-1 with Commissioner Solari dissenting yes.
Morning, Commissioners. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last week, we had an ensuing...
Name and address for the record, please.
Joseph Paladin, President Black Swan Consulting, 730 Commerce Center Drive, Sebastian. Sorry.
No problem.
Last week, we had an ensuing conversation over some right-of-way acquisitions on 66th Avenue and the eminent domain process, and defined the word immediately. And I was under the impression we were going to get a status report this week from the county attorney's office on these eminent domain processes, and I didn't see it on the agenda anywhere. I was wondering if you could enlighten me on that.
I think Bill DeBrol has the information. We couldn't get it on the agenda by the following day, but I think the information's available now, and perhaps he'll come down and share that before the end of the meeting.
Thank you very much.
Okay, anything else? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. That concludes the consent agenda. And next we have the public items, which is the consideration of ordinance to temporarily suspend imposition of impact fees for emergency services facilities, correctional, public buildings, law enforcement, and solid waste facilities. Mr. Keating, welcome.
Good morning. I'm Bob Keating, County Community Development Director. In your backup, you have a proposed ordinance that, if adopted, would suspend 5 of the county's 9 impact fees for a 6-month period. And this is consistent with the direction that the board gave staff at its March 3rd meeting. Just to tell you, the 5 fees that are proposed to be suspended are for emergency services facilities, correctional facilities, public buildings, law enforcement, and solid waste facilities. Besides the ordinance, we also have a copy of new impact fee rate schedules in your backup, and that shows the new impact fee rates by land use categories, with each of the 5 suspended fees. Besides drafting the ordinance and advertising for the public hearing today, staff also contacted the municipalities because the county has interlocal agreements with each of the municipalities for impact fee imposition and impact fee collection. And those interlocal agreements require the county to give the municipalities a 30-day notice before making any amendments to the impact fee ordinance. All municipalities have indicated that they would waive that 30 days notice. I've gotten 4 of them in writing. I have not gotten in writing the City of Vero Beach's concurrence with that, but I've gotten a verbal concurrence, so staff feels that we're okay with the interlocal agreements. The effect of the 6-month suspension will be about a 10% reduction for residential impact fees and up to a 35.5% reduction in some of the non-residential fees. Now, it really depends on the land use categories, and Jason is here, and if you'd like, he can go through his interactive spreadsheet and can show you the effect for any particular land use category. But as I said, it does differ by land use categories. Just a couple of other points that I want to make. With this suspension, there will be a loss of revenue that can be used for capital facilities. In the 07-08 fiscal year, the county collected almost $1 million in those 5 impact fee categories. So if you make the assumption that development stays at the same level for this fiscal year, a 6-month suspension would be about half of that, about $490,000. But really the bottom line is development is significantly less this year than it was last year. So the impact fee revenue shortfall would probably be a lot less than that. One of the criteria in the ordinance, or one of the conditions in the ordinance, is that anyone receiving the benefit of the lower fees for the 5 fee suspensions must obtain a certificate of occupancy within 18 months of building permit issuance. And this was something that was discussed by the board at the March 3rd meeting, and it's something that I think will make the intent of the ordinance really come to fruition, and that's that people get out and build and create jobs and stimulate the economy really immediately. I do also want to point out, I'm sure you all know this, but this is something that's being done around the state. Local governments around the state are making modifications to their impact fee ordinances. A lot of local governments are doing what is proposed here. They're taking a temporary measure. They're either temporarily eliminating fees, temporarily suspending fees, or in some ways reducing fees for a set period of time, not doing it permanently. Also, I know there was discussion of Brevard County at the last meeting, and Brevard County did go and they also reduced their impact fees for a 2-year period, and they did it across the board. They did it both for residential and commercial. I think they found that it was legally problematic to reduce fees just for commercial, given the nature of impact fee law.
Bob, what was their reduction by? Was it an elimination or a reduction?
Actually, what they did is they suspended their transportation impact fees for the 2-year period, just the opposite of what we're doing. I think staff here feels that transportation is probably the most important facility. It's the facility that really is most visible, and you see the effect of really the impacts of not providing additional capacity in transportation. So whereas Brevard's suspending their traffic impact fees and keeping their others, we're proposing to suspend several of the others and keep transportation as well as 3 other impact fees that we have. With that, staff recommends that you do adopt the attached ordinance, and if you have any questions regarding the proposed fees, Jason can put the numbers on the in a spreadsheet, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners, any questions?
No, Mr. Chairman.
All right, you're ready to go into the public hearing then. We'll, at this time, we will open up the public hearing. Anybody from the public wish to speak? Come forward, please. And give your name and address for the record, if you would.
Joseph Bowden, President of Black Swan Consulting. I think that this is a bad business deal, in my opinion. Let me tell you why. Number one, it looks like you're kind of negotiating with yourselves. We don't have an opponent there to negotiate this with. We're trying to do something with these impact fees to make it right, and we're just negotiating amongst ourselves. Number two, the way the commission voted on this, I mean, two of the commissioners didn't vote for it. Wesley, you didn't really get what you wanted, and Commissioner Wheeler compromised his stance on residential impact fees, which I compliment him for, but that's not somewhere where he would normally go. So I think that we're making compromises we maybe don't have to make. Now, let me just say what I think would be an answer, and then the commissioners can decide how they want to handle it. I think, number one, I don't think we should reduce residential impact fees at all. As a matter of fact, I think if you look at Commissioner Wheeler's motion on this, he asked that the Duncan report be brought back as part of the motion. I think the Duncan report was looked at. I think we studied it. I think that we need to take responsibility for building roads in the future, and I think that new construction should pay for itself. And I think residential is all about that. I think the Duncan report should be adopted. I think the residential should be increased so we can afford to build our roads. And I think we should eliminate commercial industrial impact fees. And I think the way that we should make up the difference for that, so maybe we have a legal stand, is that in the implication of the Duncan report, we can use that as part of the increase that we don't attribute to commercial industrial. We can also look at the 6-cent optional gas tax and apply that to the difference where we're not having commercial industrial impact fees. I think unless we do that, we're not really competing with the adjacent counties, because they're reducing much more than the 35% average that we show, and that's not the bottom end of the average, that's the top end of your commercial industrial average. There's many other different departments there that's much less than 35%. So I think we're not really doing something to compete with the other counties, if that's what we're trying to do, and I think we're really hurting ourselves as far as revenue in the future. If you look at the building permits that are being pulled, they're being pulled by the big national companies out there, most of them. So we're only giving them a chance to pull more building permits and build more houses and add to the glut of inventory out here. This hurt our economy. This hurt the housing market. This hurt what the county's trying to achieve. So I don't see any reason to go ahead and support them pulling more permits in order to put more of the local guys out of business, the small people out of business. There's just very few left. I don't see a reason for that. So I think if you did that, and if you work the legality aspect of it as our defending ourselves in court or our defensive stand, which, again, I really don't know who we're defending ourselves against, I think we make a statement. We want business. We want you to come in here and do a business. We want to create jobs. That's what this is all about, is jobs. And we're not creating any jobs with big out-of-town developers pulling building permits because they got their own subs. They're not helping us at all. So I think we need to look into that, and I think that maybe Mr. Keating and their staff can come up with a study over that period of time when we do this move and adjust the different formulas that we have so we can adjust that downside on the commercial industrial and the upside in the residential. If we don't collect that impact fee money now, somewhere down the road, we're going to have to make up the difference. Somebody's going to have to make up the difference. So I say right now, I don't think we ought to influence and add to the problem. I don't think we need any more houses out there on the market that are empty. I think we need to create jobs through industrial, commercial, building and construction, and businesses that are actually going to come into this area. So I'd like that to be looked into before we just jump ahead and do this. And it's not going to make that big of a difference with the adjacent counties because we're not even close to what they're giving. So let's not pretend it is. Thanks.
Thank you. Dr. Beal, welcome.
I'm Dr. Valerie Beal, and I live in Vero Beach. And I've been a horse veterinarian here for almost 20 years. And, sir, I respectfully totally disagree with him. I have seen many of my friends, just on the housing note, not build homes or stop building their homes and move into another house because of these impact fees. I'm attempting to build a small animal hospital with a much-needed horse surgical facility. There's no horse surgery center for vital colic surgery between Gainesville and West Palm Beach where the price is double. My impact fees in my area where there is no water, no minimal counting, there's no lighting, is $29,000. This reduction tremendously impacts my ability to build this much-needed facility. I mean, I'm trying to help Vero Beach's community. I've already given more jobs. I have like 7 employees now. It'll provide, I'm looking to hire another veterinarian or 2 with this, plus technicians. I'm trying to give people jobs. And I really think that it's a good move to help stimulate small business people like me here in the community to build their businesses and to add. I did have a question. When would the new rates be effective? Would it be
April
the date
1st.
the building's permit is?
April 1st.
Okay. I'm all for it.
Dr. Bill, thank you very much for coming down, and exactly what you just stated is really the intent of what I'm trying to get accomplished with this. I would certainly like to see it be a little more aggressive, and I do disagree with Mr. Paladin like you do on this. And just in that $29,000, I'm pretty sure that's $29,000 per 1,000 square feet of facility, or is that just a total of $29,000? $29,000? Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to say, and just to clarify, because I think, as I understand it, there's misunderstood information. I believe what Mr. Paladin said, raise the impact fees on residential and get rid of impact fees on commercial and industrial, which you're building a commercial structure. And my position has been and will continue to be that it's the residential rooftops that create the need for infrastructure and services. The commercial people follow those rooftops here to provide a service, and we charge them an disproportionate share of costs, and particularly on transportation, I believe.
Commissioner Davis, that's exactly what I meant, and I welcome the 35% reduction you're doing in commercial industrial. I wasn't trying to eliminate that. I'd like to see commercial industrial impact fees eliminated entirely for a while, and I don't think that lowering residential should be part of it. I think we should just do away with commercial industrial impact fees for this period of time.
Okay, thank you. Jens
Tripson, 2525 14th Street, Vero Beach. To me, if you think that we can incentivize building our way out of a dilemma that we've overbuilt our way into is ludicrous. You're looking at the problem wrong. From a commercial standpoint, does that include retail space?
Yes.
Well, if I was a businessman and I'd build a retail center that I was going to rent to businesses in the last 5 years and pay those impact fees, and now you are going to give either a 100% reduction or a 35% reduction to competition. If I've got empty spaces, and you ride around, there are hundreds of empty retail spaces in this county, and you're going to give a new building a 35 to 100% incentive to rent their places at a lower rate than I can rent them, I would be outraged. I don't know why there aren't more business people here to complain about that, because we've got a lot of new commercial space that's been built that's empty, and we're going to add to it?
No, that's really just to let you know where I'm coming from on this, Jens, is no, I don't see anybody out there, and if they are, they've got to be few and far between, saying, I'm going to go build more space right now because there's plenty of vacant space out there. The individual that I'm looking at is the local homegrown person that, just like Dr. Beal back there, that has a small business in this community that's trying to expand. You know the facility we're talking about, and you also know the quality of veterinarian services that she provides. have any, yeah, mine too. And that is the individual that I'm trying to be able to spur, to be able to spend some dollars. They have the ability to get financing. They've got the plan. This is just enough to just push them over the hump to be able to expand their facilities. And knowing Dr. Beal, and she's going to use local contractors. She's not a home builder from South Florida that has her own contractors. I can just about go down the list of individuals that she's going to hire, and those are people right now that are on the verge of losing their houses or losing their jobs or being laid off if we're not careful. Jim, those are the people that I'm trying to help right now today.
I have no argument with that. Then you need to be more specific on who you're going to cut the impact fees for. If you're going to cut it for somebody like that, that's one thing. But if you're going to give it across the board to somebody coming in to build retail space, then I think that's giving unfair competition in a market that should control itself, not have government give money to do it.
We're going to start over here with Commissioner O'Brien.
Yeah, James, what we're trying to do is a couple short-term economic incentives, which this falls under, and then to address those empty commercial buildings, as you very correctly pointed out, there's a lot of them. The board has approved other more longer-term economic incentives, like the increase in our jobs grant allocations. Those are designed to try to get a business here or an existing business to expand to fill up some of that vacant commercial space. So it's kind of a mix of shorter term and more longer term. And I agree with your point about the unfair competition, but I agree with Chairman Davis. I think, like Dr. Beal, anybody getting ready to move forward probably knows they're going to have a tenant and a business for that building. They're just not going to build empty buildings anymore. So they're only going to move forward if they have a tenant or a business to fill that building.
We can only hope.
and we're trying, Jens.
Commissioner Fletcher.
And I believe the motion in this move was to display our openness and ability to accept business, and I don't agree with the ruling. However, we have to respect the ruling of not being able to separate the commercial with the retail and retail with residential as well. And but with that, I'd like Jason to just again go over the numbers, because we're hearing 35% reduction, which is not the case, and that's only a perception as to what the true reduction is. There are different levels of reduction that are going to apply, and I don't want Dr. Beal to be misled, nor the rest of the public, or Mr. Paladin, who stated that this was a 35% reduction. This most certainly is not a 35% reduction. It is a selected area that we have a 35% reduction, and those reductions are varying from 19% down to 9.2%, in which, Jason, you're prepared to...
Yeah, but I don't want Jason to do that right now in the middle of the public hearing, Commissioner. Before we take the vote, we'll have him do that right now. If there's any other comments directly on the public comment, and then I'd like to give the public the opportunity to continue, then we'll come back and conclude with our what you're asking.
I'll give Jason time to get the numbers too. Thank you.
Commissioner Wheeler.
Yeah, I'd like to point out, in fact, when I made the motion to cut these fees, and I think I stated during that time, it really had nothing to do with economical incentives, because I don't see it having an impact on economic or giving economical incentives here. I did this because I have felt all along that our impact fees on commercial development is too high. And through the study, and I think you can ask a consultant for most anything, and they can come back with a study that will work. That's why I wanted the Duncan report to come back. I also wanted to accept the Duncan report minus commercial and industrial, and come back with a different study on that. And I think that if we had a consultant and gave him direction as to what our philosophy is, that they can come back with a study that would be sustainable and would stand up in court, and we could reduce impact fees on commercial industrial. And I think we could also go back and look at and define what type of commercial and what kind of industrial. I believe that's possible, and I believe it's possible to do that legally, because right now I think the studies charge too much from commercial particularly, and not enough for new residential. So I just want to be clear that That's where I'm coming from. I don't think this is going to help the economy here at all.
I think it won't hurt. Yes, Mr. Johnson. Name and address for the record, please.
Bob Johnson, Carlin Subdivision. First, before I get started, the public hearing this morning in this proposed ordinance has these items that are addressed here in the agenda as those items that are going to be deleted temporarily from the, is that correct?
That's 6 months.
Recently, last weekend, California had the worst officer slaying in the history of California in Oakland. Two patrol officers stopped a gentleman and they got shot to death. This gentleman escaped and went to an apartment house where his sister lived, and the SWAT team came in, and the gentleman who shot the two original policemen was hidden in a closet, and he shot through the closet door the other two other police officers. My point is that crime rate's going up all over. We see it, it's potential here. We read about it in the newspaper all the time. Yet, in the sheriff's budget, he's working hard. I haven't talked to the sheriff, but he's working hard to reduce his budget. Yet, one of the items that you're trying to curtail the sheriff in doing his job is a deletion of his law enforcement impact fee. And I disagree with that totally. I think if any period of time that we need to consider helping the sheriff out is right now. I know that we have an economic situation. We're trying to address that problem. But we also, in the real world, have crime rates potentially going up in our county. St. Lucie County, we read about crime. So I object to the law enforcement impact fee being deleted. The second question I have is, are any of these impact fees that are being deleted, are down the road in the long term, the citizens are going to be taxed by another means, by the deletion of these? Are we going to find that our gas tax is going to go up, or some other tax, or so forth? I'd like to hear that explanation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Keating, is that in the ordinance anywhere?
That is not in the ordinance.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak on the public hearing? Welcome, Mr. Thompson.
Good morning. How y'all doing?
Good. Name and address for the record, please.
Jeff Thompson, Seville Avenue, Vero Beach. Commissioner Davis, you did a wonderful job at the auction Saturday night. Thank you. Thank you. You certainly squeaked some more money out of some people that weren't wanting to spend any more. Looking at this thing, here in Brevard County did a 2-year, and I'm looking at 6 months and looking at the bank situation and with whatever our federal government's doing, and I don't understand it all. I probably never will until it's too late, unfortunately, like all of us. But I think 6 months might be that time frame when the banks finally settle down and start freeing up some of the funds that businesses may need to, whether it's do an addition or do a small commercial building or something like that. So I'd like for y'all to entertain maybe extending that for longer than 6 months till something at least starts creeping forward here. Right now there's so many constraints on things right now. I don't know where to begin. Another issue is that one day this thing, we all know it's going to come back, and you'll have a chance to revisit this later, whether it's this board or whoever's sitting here, to go back and revisit impact fees. I'm not a real fan of impact fees, and there's so many arguments on both sides of the issue. I'd just like for you all to look at this, maybe go ahead and stretch this thing out for longer than 6 months so something can get done. The next thing is, talking about that Duncan report, my understanding is that that maybe the traffic study that was done, that was given to the people that did the Duncan report, wasn't a good study. And maybe we need to revisit how we look at traffic and really get a better grasp on that before we move too far forward with the traffic situation. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Mr. Kennedy? Name and address for the record, please. Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Andrew Kennedy, 3001 Ocean Drive. I should have skipped ahead of him because I concur with Mr. Thompson. The Duncan report, I know we spent a lot of money on that, and it's kicked around on and off and on and off. What I would like to see is, or recommend that you reach out to some of our local professionals, of which we have many in this market, i.e. Brian Good, Frank Watanabe, among a few, Rhonda Pupersmith. I've had separate conversations with a couple of them, and they'd be willing to look at things at no cost. But these people do traffic impact analysis on a regular basis. They have good ideas, and that coupled with Mr. Mora and his staff, I think that would be a very good outlet to explore exactly what Mr. Thompson was talking about. How do we measure it, and maybe save some costs in the interim? So I would recommend, and that also quantifying the 6 month or whatever the duration will be. How are we going to track that? Staff, I suppose, is going to look at who comes in and does what at what time and report back, or how would that work?
Yeah, they'll clearly be able to tell us what the fees being charged now versus what some individuals have applied for a permit in the event they get their certificate of occupancy. If there's going to be a cost spread, and we'll know that in 6 months. And I think really that Mr. Thompson summed it up best with the intent of this is in 6 months we should have a clear direction of A, we haven't done enough, or B, we can tighten things back up, and I think that's really where we'll probably be in the 6 month. That's the time frame that we're putting forth.
Okay. And I'm happy to get involved to help facilitate anything with these outside traffic engineers and try and save the county a little money as well. So thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Anybody else wish to speak? Yes. Welcome, Ms. Castletine.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Helene Castletine. I'm the Director of Economic Development for the Indian River County Chamber of Commerce, 1216 21st Street. And I'd just like to say thank you. In my professional opinion, this sends a great message. It sends a positive message. And, as we heard previously, it can help our local businesses, and that's fantastic. But even then, it can also send that positive message to those business owners, those business executives throughout the country who may be in the first stage of their due diligence. Perhaps down the road they're looking to expand or find a new location. This sends a positive message to them should they be looking at Florida, looking at the East Coast, and looking at Indian River County. And that, yes, indeed, we are welcoming new business into Indian River County. So thank you.
Thank you, Helene. Any other comments from the public? Come on up, please. Yes, Ms. Renzi.
Good morning. Renee Renzi, Waverly Place. I wasn't going to speak this morning because I have such a rotten cold. But the question's there. I would like to know what criterion was used to base these decisions on. I would have thought the most vital services of the county should be considered emergency services facilities. Does this mean you consider we have enough fire and rescue stations, that we have enough law enforcement? I don't know about solid waste. I know we have a big addition to the jail, so you might consider correctional facilities as sufficient. But I would have thought the list most likely to be cut would have been parks, libraries, and recreation. I know they're all valuable public facilities, but I wouldn't put them at the top of the list to be financed. I'd just like to know what basis you use to make this decision on these facilities.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Renzi. Mr. Bear, would you like to elaborate a little bit on that?
Basically, we looked at the fact that when we look at our capital needs, the biggest hurdle we had was road projects. We know that they're presently, if we look on the 20-year horizon, they're underfunded. So we thought that impact fee, if we cut it, we would leave the community down the road in a bad position. The other impact fees we thought we could get by with, reducing them on a short-term basis. However, we are going to need money. Mrs. Renzi is right, for jails and things like that down the road, and for public safety facilities and more fire stations, there's no doubt. But this is right now, because of our economic times, we're trying to stimulate our economy and take some risk.
Well, I know all areas need money, but you had to make a decision on these are the most important, and I think the list is upside down, frankly. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Renzi. Hope you get to feeling better. Yes, Mr. Lothar.
Mr. Chairman, good morning. I first of all commend you all for finally talking about the commercial and the business. It's something I think Indian River County has failed to talk about in a long time. The main question I want to ask, and to my memory and what I recollect with being involved in Indian River County, I don't think that I know of since 2002 have even approached the commercial side of impact fees. Is that correct? Jason, Bob, do you all recollect us ever looking at commercial impact fees?
We increased them in 04, 05 on the commercial side, didn't we?
I don't remember.
We actually increased across the board.
Yeah.
We added all these impact fees. We only had road impact fees initially. We added these in, is it 2005? Yes. The other 8.
So then it was across the board.
Yes.
Well, I do. Again, I commend you all for finally looking at the business side of it. Being a local business owner, I feel the pain. I feel the pain. A lot of people out there that are trying to do some business. I can tell you, there's another veterinarian that was looking at building off of 27th Avenue a couple years back. I think had over $400,000 of impact fees. Couldn't do it. So I commend you all looking at this.
Thank you. And give your name and address for the record, just so.
Tom Lowther, 20th Avenue, River Beach.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson, welcome.
Thank you. Charlie Wilson, 1057 6th Avenue in Vero Beach. I also want to applaud you for taking this action. It is the least amount that you could possibly do. And I want to point out that other counties have taken far more aggressive action than we have. So, but we do what we can do, and the worst thing that we could possibly do is nothing. And so I do really want to applaud all of you for taking this, and it didn't take long for politics to get involved in this, and so we can just all put our self-political agendas aside for just a little while and remember that there are more unemployed families in Indian River County today than ever in its history. And as we start, we worry that in order to help those unemployed families, that somebody might slip in and get some help that we don't want to help. But the fact is because of our legal restrictions, it's almost like working with your computer where you're shaking it and you're trying to get it to do things, and it tells you you're not supposed to do it, but trying to trick it into doing the things that you're trying to get it to do. Well, that seems to be what we're doing here, because we're trying to lower commercial fees and not lower residential fees. But we have these obstacles that we have to keep getting over. And the fact is we're not trying to do economic development with impact fees. We're simply reducing the amount we're taking. The problem is not that we're bailing somebody out. What we're really doing is correcting the problem that we started in the first place, and that is that we took too large a bite from the apple. And we have choked business in this community. You know that we have an anti-business reputation, and this is the first step in trying to correct that. Because frankly, it's not something we're doing new, it's something we're correcting that we didn't do correctly in the past. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Anyone else wish to speak? I'm now declaring the public hearing closed, and let the record show that ample opportunity to address this issue has been provided to all. Commissioners, you wanted to see Jason Brown's presentation?
Mr. Chairman, yes, I'd like Jason to again bring up the numbers on the overhead or explain the numbers so that the citizens truly understand the impact of the reduction of the impact fees.
Okay, thank you, Commissioners. For the record, Jason Brown, County Budget Director. As Commissioner Fleischer was alluding to before, some of the decreases in the various commercial impact fees will be different overall as a result of this action. There are some different dynamics going on in the different land use types. The residential are typically going to be in the range of 9 to 10% decrease with this change. Commercial will change depending on the category. For example, what we're showing here is manufacturing at a 35% discount. Dr. Beal spoke earlier, so one of the land use types that I did not have in this spreadsheet, because I didn't include all of them, was veterinary clinic, but I've taken a look, and the decrease for veterinary clinic would be 33%, going from 6,400 per 1,000 square feet to about 4,200 per 1,000 square feet, so a decrease of about a third there. If you looked at office up to 50,000 square feet, it's a 19.3% decrease, and I'll just run through a couple different types here. Warehouse is about 20.5% decrease. Retail under 50,000 square feet is 23.5% decrease. Restaurants 21.9. I think the one to disclose the lowest decrease of the commercial types that I'm aware of is a banquet drive-in, which is only about 6.8% down, but most of them are in that 20% to 30% decrease of the non-residential land use types. If we look at a sit-down restaurant, it's 21.9% decrease also. So that's just a sampling of some of the more common land use types that we have coming in and getting built and having to pay these impact fees. So those are the high points, and if you have any other questions regarding this, I'll endeavor to answer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. I appreciate that.
Jason, that's still on the county webpage, right? So if somebody wanted to go in there and play with those numbers at home, it's still on the website.
You can go on there and take a look at it, yes.
Okay. Thank you. All right, Commissioners, any other questions before we've, if not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move staff recommendation.
I'll second that. Is there any discussion, Commissioners?
There is.
Yes, Commissioner Solari.
I'd like to, first off, I agree with Commissioner Wheeler that the commercial industrial impact fees are too high, but I disagree with the method we're going about it. I think, as Andrew Kennedy said, we ought to go back to the Duncan report. We ought to go back to the traffic study. We ought to use local resources and take 2 or 3 months to do this right. And I think that with a little work, we can show that the impact fees for commercial industrial are much higher than they should be, and that we can get a permanent reduction, not a 6-month reduction. So, as I mentioned before, that's the path I'd like to go down. I have one other problem, and if you remember last week, Commissioner Wheeler had us pass a resolution. I believe we did the right thing, and that was a resolution against the Senate bill which would dismantle the DCA. And in that background, in the backup information, he noted that we were doing this or that the Senate bill was to do this to stimulate the state's economy by loosening the rules for construction permitting. So last week we were against using a method for stimulating the economy, but this week we want to use impact fees to stimulate the economy. And I think that last week we did the right thing by not using growth management tools to stimulate the economy, but this week we're doing the wrong thing by using growth management tools to stimulate the economy. I believe that government's focus ought to be on the quality of the community at the end of the day, and that growth management tools are in place to work on the quality of the community. And if we start mixing things that are set up for one purpose to use them for another purpose, down the line we're going to find ourselves in trouble. So that is the basic reason why, while I support and believe at the end of the day we should be reducing commercial industrial impact fees, while I believe that today we're going about it the wrong way, so I will be against the motion.
Mr. Solari, what I'd like to do is just to clarify a few things, and I'll start with the DCA. that wasn't my intent in supporting that motion. My intent was simply to allow us the local control and to be able to do what we need to do here locally for the constituents in our community. And so that was my support for that resolution at the last meeting. And then the issue of, as far as, the growth and exactly what you just said, they have the old adage that growth is inevitable. I don't believe that to be the case. I'm convinced government can kill it. And so I think that this is an opportunity for us to be able to help out the small business people in this community that have the plans and that have the financial means, and give them just that little incentive to move forward versus waiting another 6 months. Any other comments, Commissioners?
Yeah, I'd like to make Commissioner Solari and I agree for the most part, but I think there's two different methodologies here. One is what we're doing as a minimal, and I generally agree, but what the state is looking at doing by getting rid of concurrency, not allowing us to have impact fees, taking over local government, I mean, it's like we're doing this with probably an out-office stitch for a cut, and what they're doing is using a hatchet to destroy the whole system.
A sledgehammer to kill a fly.
Yeah, thank you. The other thing is, as I said earlier, my intent for this really, and I mentioned that when I made it was never about economic stimulation. I don't think it's going to stimulate the economy here. I think it was a compromise from my way of thinking to get the Duncan report back. Since Mr. Solari's back on here, and I think we ought to readdress the Duncan report. I think the Duncan report probably was accurate with residential, but way too high in expense. And I've been in that position for several years. I never have been able to understand why when somebody comes in to provide a service, because it's needed, because of population growth, that the businesses have to pay for the impact. And I think there's some responsibility for impact if they need a turning lane, or if they can establish that they draw, outside. But you take a small bakery, for instance, like Ferrara's Bakery. They're in a plaza. Let's assume they're going to build a 2,000 square foot building. They provide a service to the community that's already here. If the community wasn't here, they wouldn't build the bakery. That's why all of the new growth we've had in this county has taken place here commercially and not at Yeehaw Junction. And I do take exception to the picture that Mr. Wilson painted. If you look at the growth in this county over the last 5 or 6 years, I don't see how you can say we're non-business, because the business community here and the commercial development and also some industrial for a county our size has, I think, been impressive. And I don't think we have, there's some people think we have an anti-business attitude, and I don't think we do. I think we try to look out for the residents that are here and protect our quality of life. But bottom line is there's been a lot of growth in this county, not just residential, but in commercial in the last 5 years here. And I would like to see the Duncan report come back. I'd like to reevaluate how we define commercial industrial properties, maybe put them in different categories, and also do a new traffic study to make it more legitimate from my perspective.
Commissioner Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a few points. I most certainly, from the beginning of this discussion, wanted to see commercial separated from residential. Again, our attorney and many scholarly attorneys in adjoining counties have now realized that we cannot separate these two impacts. However, this is an important process to realize that there is a possibility of adding to the success of one of our more important commercial applications here in Indian River County, and that is the local business. The local businesses, I've been approached by several people who are considering the application going forward, and it has been since the discussion of the reduction of the commercial impact fees through across-the-board reductions that will probably push them over the edge and be able to bring them on this side of the fence and maybe stimulating the economy. I believe it's just one of the many tools and applications that will be used to bring us through this all. As far as the 6-month process, there's been some discussion about we'd like to see it longer. Most certainly, I believe in 6 months it will be revisited, and the purpose and my intent on adding the 6-month clause to the motion was to force us, to compel us, to bring it back, to examine, to see if this was the tool, this is the tool, if it should be going forward, if there should be other adjustments made, or we need to go in a different direction. And I believe that we will be discussing this in 6 months, and I just wanted to explain that process.
Commissioner O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I concur completely with what Commissioner Wheeler and Commissioner Solari want to achieve. And I'm very excited that Andrew Kennedy is volunteering a whole bunch of engineers to work for us for free, so we appreciate that. But having gone through this impact fee debate for probably well over a year, I don't think we can get anything accomplished or a consensus in 2 to 3 months. So I think we're probably lucky if we can get a consensus by the end of the 6-month period. And that won't help the people like Dr. Beal who have a project, and if her impact fee can now go from $29,000, take a third of that, she's now under $20,000. If that helps her move forward in the next 6 months and supply those jobs, not only on the construction side, but also to fill the facility with the vet and support staff, then that's what we need to do. We are in a crisis. We do need to take action. It may not be the most perfect action we can take, but coupled with the other things we're doing, the job grants, we'll be bringing the tax abatement program up. We lowered a lot of our LDR maintenance requirements to help the businesses with their letters of credit. Staff, Bob and Stan, have already done a lot of policy changes to to expedite our permitting process. So we're doing a lot of things here to help. I see this as something we need to do now so those projects can move forward, and we're going to need all 6 months, if not longer, to revise or come to an agreement on this impact fee issue. So for that, I think it's critical that we do move forward with this, and in the meantime, we will work on the longer-term solution, but we need this right now.
Well, very well said, Commissioner. And after that, I don't believe there's anything left to say. I'll entertain a motion. Or do we have a motion?
We have a motion and a second.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
Nay.
The motion passes 4-1 with Commissioner Solari dissenting. All right, at this time, we'll take a 15-minute recess and reconvene.
this thing go? Yeah, let's go. Come on, let's go. Let's get out of here.
Meeting will come to order. We are now holding we are now on the, I believe we left the
Departmental matters.
Community development, so that means human resources? Or no, I'm sorry. Second half of community development, which is...
County administrators matters, I think.
Oh, that's right, that's an addition. Thank you. Mr. Baird.
Mr. Baird's not here, but there's been
Pull your microphone up. There you go.
There's been a request from St. Helens Church to continue celebrating Easter sunrise at Holman Stadium, which they've done for the past 20 years. And in your backup, there was added some needs that they have and the care that they'll give. The only concern we have is from a risk management standpoint that we'd be provided a certificate of liability insurance naming the county an additional insured for that one day. And I think with that, we can probably accommodate their request.
Move approval.
Second. Got a motion from Commissioner Wheeler, second from Commissioner Flesher. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
The only concern I have about this is for years, when the Dodgers had the lease for this facility, that the Dodgers donated it as a private entity. Now that kind of we're back in the ownership as a public entity and using taxpayer dollars for this, and I think just to be consistent with all the other nonprofits that we've dealt with, that we might want to just consider our minimal nonprofit rental fee of like $300, just so we're very consistent on how we treat these requests for different county resources and county property.
Go ahead.
No, any further discussion?
I think Commissioner O'Brien has a good point. There's nothing on the cost to the county on this, and whatever the minimum cost to the county is, I think ought to be borne by the applicant here.
In the backup, it did clearly state that the church was perfectly willing and understanding to pay for those resources.
And I agree with Commissioner O'Brien, and I think that this also sets the benchmark of being consistent in the future.
Anybody like to speak on I see Mr. Schlitt out there.
Paul Zedak, I reside at 970 Fifth Place, and I'm parish manager at St. Helens. With regard to Mr. Collins' comment, we'll gladly give you a certificate of liability covering that possibility. And as far as cost, we understand that you're in new territory as far as the stadium is concerned, and so are we, and we will gladly live up to any requirements or settings that you have.
So, Jim, I'd be happy to just take the collection.
Percentage
That was very nice of Commissioner Solari to volunteer to assist the church.
Bob's our financial commissioner.
I'll even assist with the collection.
All right, Commissioners, let's back on task here. We've got a motion and a second, and I'm assuming that you added that, Commissioner Wheeler, and your second did so. And if there's no objection from the church, then I'm good with that too also. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you, Commissioners. That concluded the County Administrator's matters. Now that moves us to the Departmental Matters, Community Development Request for Staff Authorization to issue the work order for the CDM review of mining permits or applications. Commissioners, any questions? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll
move.
Okay.
I've got considerable questions with this. I mean, as I read this, the hydrology part of this could take as long as about 90 days. And if I think back to when we talked about this at the hearing, the purpose of this was primarily to give the Planning and Zoning Board the opportunity to have some expertise so that they could make sense out of the applicant's report and not to have a second permitting process. The permitting for this is actually done by the St. Johns River Water Management District, and they're the ones who have the expertise. And I think it was fine for us to have the hydrologist come on board at the applicant's expense to answer all necessary questions. But this process is extremely lengthy, and it also talks about the private county staff, a written assessment may include recommended conditions, and I don't think that was part of the original intent or purpose of the hydrologist. So I'd actually like to see this go back to staff to shrink the timeline significantly. And if, for instance, task performed within 30 days receipt of hydrology report. I mean, that should be 15 days. And another part where it takes evidently 55 days of receipt of hydrology report should be within 30 days, I think. And then I'm worried about a part where it says attend Planning and Zoning Commission and the scheduling of that meeting. I think that ought to be done when the hydrology report is first given to the staff. Mm-hmm. And then that sets a clock running so that the applicant will know when it's coming before the P&Z. But I have a big problem. Well, I think that, as we've talked about economic development, that part of the problem that people have mentioned time and time again is that we have a process which slows things up considerably, and that's what I see this as molasses in the process. I believe that when we went through the mining process, we added some 100 things to protect both the surrounding people and the environment, and that we did the right thing. But this is using one little segment of that to basically slow down the process again, add tremendous expense to the process for the wrong reasons. So I'd actually like to send this back to staff to simplify and clarify it and see if they can't get things down to, say, a 30-day period, where at the time of the filing it is scheduled before the P&Z. And tentatively, I mean, maybe something will come up so it can't meet it at that day. But it'd be just like if I put something on the agenda on Wednesday for the Tuesday meeting, if something intervened, okay, I can pull it, but it's hard to add it. Mm-hmm. So I'd rather go through that and show that the purpose of this is to, yes, protect the environment, yes, make sure that the P&Z has necessary expertise to answer any questions about the hydrology report, but not to slow down the process in any way.
Sounded like a lengthy motion.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
It's my understanding that when this hydrology report is done, it needs to be submitted to St. Johns River Water Management District, and it will be submitted to the county concurrently. And I doubt if St. Johns issues any mining permits in less than 60 days, so I don't think this slows the process down any at all. I also think, partly when we discussed this, we heard a hydrologist who represented the mining interest state. He can make a report, say anything he wanted it to, or words to that effect. The whole purpose here is that we have our own expert working for the county. And every time we go in these situations, either with right-of-way, and the other party has a eminent domain expert lawyer, and we don't, we get creamed. And I can see this happening too. If we don't have our own expert hydrologist, the only expert there is for the applicant, and so this just levels the playing field to make sure that we have somebody there looking out for the best interests of the county residents. So I'm happy with what staff has brought here. I don't see it delaying anything, and I think it's needed to give us that protection.
I'm clearly accepting the idea that we should have a hydrologist. I've been clear on that from the very start. But I don't think we need to have a process which takes up to 90 or 100 or 120 days. And again, it may take St. Johns River Water Management District 60 days because they're actually doing the permitting. I would think that somebody, a hydrologist, if he actually had expertise, could read a report and comment on it within a week or two. I mean, we're asked every week, week in, week out, in less than 2 business days, to take a 400 or 500 or 600 page agenda and make sense out of it. And if we can do that and be expected to do that in a reasonable way and then come back and answer and ask questions before whatever person comes before us, I think a trained, licensed hydrologist ought to be able to come back within a week, if not 2 weeks, at the most, and be prepared to answer any questions. So to give him a substantially less standard than we're held to every week, I think, is short-sighted on our part.
Well, we expect a better job from him than we do us.
That's one commissioner's point of view.
Bob, let me ask you this. What would be help me out with the time frame on this whenever it comes. I've heard Commissioner O'Brien talk about how long it takes the St. John's to issue the permit. This really isn't about the permit. I mean, it has to do with the permit, but it's more the hydrology report, so, at the P&Z hearing. Can it be shrunk to 30 days and still be effective? Or does it really need to be a 90-day period as staff's recommending?
If I could speak, Stan Bowling, County Planning Director, the ordinance that was adopted back in December gives a 60-day time frame for the county to make comment, to hire to have a professional review the hydrology report and get comments out. This is not intended to add time onto the end of a process. This is intended to feather in with the TRC, the Technical Review Committee review, as well as the St. John's permitting process, which is all going on concurrently. We're not adding, a new segment at the end of one process to the other. I think the 60 days or the 55 days that we have in the scope right there is a fairly smart way of doing this, where the expert reviewer of the county actually interacts with the applicant's expert. That's what happens now with traffic. It's what happens with drainage engineering, traffic engineering, and so forth. We think that's a smart step to have in this process before getting to a Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, and to clarify things and to have actually work a little more of a better fit in the process of having the experts talk to each other before a final recommendation or getting to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. So I think that the time frames that are in the scope, the way that it's structured, ultimately will probably serve the applicant better when it's all said and done, rather than have experts that haven't coordinated or talked to each other before a Planning and Zoning Commission meeting now talking for the first time at a Planning and Zoning Commission meeting.
I'll move staff's recommendation.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second to approve staff recommendation. No further discussion. We'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Motion passes 4-1 with Commissioner Solari dissenting. Okay, that moves us to the Human Resources Health Insurance Claims Experience and Strategies to Reduce Cost. Mr. Sexton, welcome.
Sorry about that. Good morning, Commissioners. Today we're here to talk about our health insurance plan. Earlier in the last week, or late last week, we delivered you a claims history and projected trends report from the Crown Consulting Group. Also on the agenda item, I tried to outline our expenditures over the last 5 years and what we think we might be able to do in the future. So today we're going to be offering a 5-year look back and then a 5-year projection going forward. Just some overview before I introduce Mackie Branham from the Crown Consulting Group. The county spent over $59 million in health care over the past 5 years. The trend that we're averaging is about 9 to 9.5%. Which is better than a lot and not as good as we think it could be. So today we want to discuss some things that we have been doing to try to offset trend and the expenses of our increases every year, and things that we can do going forward. Just so you know, we haven't kept the plan stagnant, and we haven't kept the amount that employees pay for dependent care stagnant. As you will see on the agenda item, in plan year 2004, the county changed the dependent coverage from $132.50 a month to $167.50 a month. That was about a $35 increase to the employees. The next year we came in, and the board once again approved an increase to the dependent care coverage from $167.50 to $202.50. In plan year 2006-2007, we didn't change what employees pay for their dependent coverage, but we did reduce the richness of the plan, if you will. And we changed a few things. We changed the deductible from $200 to $300. We changed specialist office visits from $25 to $35. And we changed the prescription co-pays, $5 each, from $5, $15, and $30, which basically means generic, name brand, and non-formulary drugs. We changed that from $5, $15, and $30 to $10, $25, and $40. 2007 plan year, we raised the deductible once again from $300 to $400. We changed the total out-of-pocket maximum from $2,000 to $3,000, and we adjusted the dependent portion of the premium from $202.50 to $217.50. Now, this last year, the current plan year that we're in, we didn't make any changes to the plan, and we did not increase the dependent coverage, the amount that the employee pays for the dependent coverage. So that was some good news this year. But as you know, it's going to be another tough year. We currently have about 30 vacancies that remain frozen right now, and we're anticipating that those positions will need to be eliminated from the budget next year, and also look for more ways to cut our budget to make sure we can meet the demands of services to the citizens and keep the bottom line where we can do that. An attempt to look at reduction of health plan staff to do researching ways to reduce those costs of the county's health insurance, and we think we can save dollars on these costs, and the more dollars we save on these costs, obviously, is the more jobs we can save and the more services we can continue to provide to the citizens. And with that, I want to turn it over for the report by Mackie Branham. He is from the Crown Consulting Group. He is our insurance broker. He has all the numbers and all the background to get us through today's presentation. So with that, I welcome Mackie.
Thanks, Jim. Good morning, Chairman Davis and Commissioners. Thank you. It was an honor and privilege to be here this morning to go over the data with you, and you should have the presentations before you of your claims history and projected trends that we provided the staff I think last week, and we've updated that for you today. And the first page, Jim, if you'll go to that slide, it's a 5-year look back of what the county is experiencing in their total cost of maintaining their health programs for the employees and dependents of Indian River County. Your claims experience, not only for the last 5 years, but for the last 10 years, has consistently tracked at a little over 9%. So your claims experience is pretty predictable. We're just getting at the numbers now. When you trend 9% forward, we're starting to represent a bigger number than what it did 5 years ago. So every year it's representing well over $1 million in increase. The second page is the benefit costs and employee contributions for the last 5 years. As you can see by the red line, it's tracking our cost of maintaining your health insurance plan. And the bottom line, the yellow line, is tracking the contributions that the employees are contributing toward the cost of the plan. As Jim alluded to, and if you can look at the year 2006, 2007, you can see your cost of maintaining your plan jumped from $11.7 million to $12.9 million, but there was a consistency in what we tried to buffer the cost of that to the employees somewhat by making, as Jim alluded to, we made plan changes to help with the control cost. And also you can see in the 2007, 2008, again, the cost escalated on the cost of maintaining our plan. And again, we made plan changes and contribution changes to the employees slightly. So as years have passed, the county is absorbing more and more of the cost year to year. Next page, Jim. Your average per employee claims per employee, we're currently at $6,813. $6,813. If we continue, as I said earlier, your trends are very consistent. If we continue that trend in claims exposures from 2008 forward, you can see the direction that we're going in, applying the 9% trend. Next page. If we continue as status quo without making plan changes or contribution changes, you can see where we will escalate to in the next 5 years by applying that same 9% trend to your cost of doing business, where we're going to end up. The next slides, where do we get our data from? Where does how do we know what these numbers are saying to us? There's a key indicator report reflects payments that we pay out in our claims exposures, and it's also broken down in 25 to 30 areas that we're spending our claims dollars. We do have a detailed report. It's about 50 pages that has all this data and the backup on it, and we can make copies of those and distribute it for the commissioners if you want. But what we're looking at today is just highlights, summaries of some of the categories where we're capturing our claims data. Again, the per employee per year, the 6813, that's where we're getting that data from. And these reports capture in a time specific what you're spending in your claims environment. If you'll go down to the bottom of the first column, you can see claims only experience was $11,825,49. Second page, again, we're dealing with the cost per member within the specifics of breaking our data down, and you can, if you look at inpatient, for example, inpatient facilities, outpatient facilities, and our drug costs, professionals, and capitations. But you'll notice that two of the largest jumps in our claims exposure is in the area of outpatient facilities, and RRX costs continue to go up. The next page is payment by utilization. Emergency room visits, you can see that's pretty stable. The number of professional services and the number of scripts, if you look at the prior year to the current year, the county's utilization, as I mentioned, it's quite predictable. These same frequencies are just going to be carried forward into your next contract year. And the frequencies, they're going to be there next year. So how do we want to deal with those is the question. The brand versus generic, if you look at the bottom left-hand side, it gives you the total number of scripts that was filled within your plan last year, and the fifth column out gives you the amount of dollars that was spent on scripts within this given period, contract period. And the last page reflects your office visit environments. You spent $3,348,272 in your office visit environments, and also your RX scripts was $3,278,000. If you add those two components together, that represents $6,625,143 is about 56% of all your total claims costs are in the office visit environments and your RX scripts. So that's where that number came from, the 56% earlier. Our recommendations last year, the Indian River County, and plan designs just allows you to reduce costs based upon the known frequencies that we're looking at. And plan designs will allow you to do that. Last year, as Jim mentioned, we did change our deductible from $300, we went to $400. The out-of-pocket exposure, we went from $2,000 to $3,000. The office visit environment and your RX scripts and emergency room is what we're concentrated on this year to try to make some changes on the frequencies that's going to be there in the following year, for next year. If we make a $10 change on our primary care, just $10 across the board on our office visit environments, it will reflect $166,000 in savings. $15 change across the board on all of our office copays is $249,000. The emergency room, currently we have no disincentive for someone using the emergency room for a regular office visit environment. So we want to incent folks, if they can wait to the next day to go see the primary care, we want to incent them to do that. So we're proposing to add a $100 copay for an emergency room visit. And on your RX scripts, if we add $5 to each of the three copay levels, that's a $250,000 savings on those frequencies. They're going to be there next year. So you have two options at the bottom with the $10 office visit increase or a $15 office visit increase. you're looking at two outcomes on these frequencies for our plan design next year. One is 433,000 and 516,000. Again, if we take our 11,000,013 in claims and we bring that forward with a 9% rate increase, that's $1,150,000 increase if we do nothing. These plan changes just will allow us to keep under medical trend. And medical trend across the board is about 12 to 11%, so the county does fare better than the average in the state. But this will help us maintain our costs going forward with these frequencies that we know that it's going to be there.
Commissioners? Any questions?
I have a couple, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Commissioner O'Brien.
Start with, when you did your projected total cost comparisons, did you factor in, the county payroll was basically flat from 06, 07, 07, 08, and probably 08, 09 was a decrease, and 09, 10 we're not filling vacancies. So did you take that into account in your projection of the total cost that our payroll is going to be shrinking and therefore the number of members will be shrinking?
No, our projections strictly are dealing with your claims exposures and the utilizations and the frequencies of what's going within your plan.
And if we...
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
If you look at 2007, 2008 on that chart, you'll see that the cost went up from 12.9 to 13.9 million. In the 2007, 2008 budget year, we actually the board cut 50 positions, so that was a decrease of 50 positions. We also had a hiring freeze that was implemented that had a lot of vacant positions, and this would only be for filled positions, the actual cost. So even with a decrease of 50 positions and more vacancies than we would have typically had in the past, we still had an increase from that 12.9 to the 13.9 million, which is in that 9% trend. So even with a decrease, the previous years we had increases in the numbers of employees in 04, 05, 06, but when we get to 07, 08, we actually had a decrease, and the numbers still went up on us. I think you have a good point, Commissioner O'Brien, that we decreased about 75 positions in this year, so that's something that goes to mitigate our overall number as well. And I don't know how 08, 09 will work out in the end, but 07, 08 we're still seeing an increase even with a slight decrease in the workforce. So it's a trend that seems like no matter what we do, it just keeps going up and up and up.
Right. Okay. Well, also in the decrease in the number of employees, remember that they are eligible to stay on our plan for 18 months under COBRA. So a lot of times if they elect COBRA coverage, they still are on the plan or could still be on the plan. And with the new economic stimulus, 65% subsidy for COBRA, some of those employees that did not elect COBRA will be receiving another notice that they could then purchase COBRA at a discount of 65%. So we may even get a few that did not elect COBRA that might find their way onto COBRA soon.
Who makes up the difference, Jim? Does the federal government pay that?
Yeah, that's part of the stimulus money, and then we'll pay it up front, and then we'll get a reimbursement.
But still, when they're on COBRA, my understanding is they're paying the full cost of that. Is that correct?
They're paying the full premium.
Under your chart, key indicators, payment and utilization, just a question. The average length of an inpatient stay increased from 5 days to 9.2. Is there a medical reason why we almost doubled the length of inpatient stay? This is on the page 3 of the payment and utilization indicators.
Well, your inpatient stays, they're going to vary upon what diagnosis they're trying to deal with within those environments.
Yeah, but going from 5 to 9 is a big change. Yes. If our medical history is so consistent, why did we all of a sudden double the number of inpatient stays? Is there any medical explanation?
Your total costs are consistent. Occasionally we will have some high cost members within the plan that just happens to have certain diagnoses that those require just those extra days of stay within there to get them back to wellness. And that's something that, it's hard to control that environment. The frequencies of the encounters of the office visit environment and the RX distributions, you can control those. And I'm sorry.
Yep. And then just my last point is on the proposed changes, I would like to see us keep the generic prescription cost at $10 instead of increasing to $20. If I look at the difference in price between, a brand prescription versus generic, it's about 3 times the cost. And I think if we keep the generic copay at $10 and increase the brand copay, you're now creating a bigger gap, which will give people more incentive to go to the generic and reduce that 3-to-1 cost. So I'd like to see us keep the generic copay at 10 and try and get more people moving to generic than brand.
And the other strategy, obviously, is just like you said, a steering mechanism. If I know I can get the generic for 10 and it's going to cost me a lot more to go with the name brand, I might be more inclined to ask my doctor about the generic. But one of the benefits that you'll be hearing about in a meeting in April, when we get closer to bringing you back the final proposal for an employee health center, about giving the prescription drugs at no copay to the employee, we'll be able to buy through a wholesaler. So, for example, you don't have this information, but we filled 927 prescriptions for Nexium last year. We're looking at a 12-month look back, and we spent about $173,000 just on Nexium alone. We would be able to buy that at nearly 50% of the cost through the wholesaler and dispense it for free through our employee health center. The employee wouldn't pay any copay, and we would still save dollars on that. So we believe in steering mechanism. If you look back a couple years in our plan changes, we didn't change the office visit for the family care or your primary care doc, but we did increase the specialty, and that was to try to steer people to their primary care physician instead of running directly to a specialist.
Right. So I just think if there's a $15 gap, people might just go ahead and say, yeah, I'll go ahead and get the brand name. But if we make it a $25 gap, I think maybe psychologically people say, whoa, that's a big jump. I'll take the generic. So that'd be my only recommendation of the proposed changes.
Commissioners, any other questions?
I'd just like to point out, even though the number of employees we've got has gone down, Commissioner Solari did point out to me on page 1 that our average enrollment is up. And I researched that a little bit, and it was for 2 reasons. One is we've got people who retire, and now that we're cutting workforce, people that retire buy the insurance, and we're encouraging retirement if you're there. And also the jail opened up under the sheriff, the expansion of the jail, and that added a lot of employees. Even though our numbers, the Board of County Commissioners, was down, the sheriff's numbers were up only because of the new facility that was open. And so those are the reasons you see our enrollment, even though our number of employees are going down, the average monthly enrollment's larger. Plus the other factor is we have a larger average monthly average enrollment because our dependent insurance is cheaper than most plans.
Not to mention with the downturn in the economy and some of the employers out there that did offer health insurance benefits, the spouse works here, they had our single coverage, the spouse worked at another employer, they had their single coverage, and when they lost their employment due to layoff, a lot of those folks are jumping on to our dependent coverage on our plan. So that's probably another reason why enrollment maintained.
What is the monthly cost under the COBRA for a retiree, the full shot?
900 and some odd change. It's
$982.50.
We
almost 12,000 a year.
2% admin fee, so it'd be 2% over $982.50.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'll go ahead and move staff recommendation with a couple of changes. One is I'd like to keep the generic copay at $10 instead of increasing to $20. And in staff's recommendation, they had to approve the implementation of the Employee Health Center, and I'm not quite ready to vote that in, but maybe just change that to continue to pursue the prospect of the health center and to bring that back for formal recommendation at that time. I don't have that implementation right here in this motion.
Yeah, that's, in my opinion, premature also, Commissioner. Thank you. I'll second that, as a matter of fact. Is there any other questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioners, our next item is the Office of Management Budget. Jason, you want to talk to us about fire hydrant?
Study.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm here today to talk to you about fire hydrant costs. What we have is our fire rescue department pays maintenance cost of maintaining fire hydrants to various water utilities throughout the county, and with the city of Vero, the county utility, and the city of Fellsmere being the three that those are paid into. Staff has researched that over the years and found that it's an uncommon practice to pay that, not unheard of, but it's uncommon. So what we wanted to do in the last year was question each of those entities charging a fee and making sure that they at least document those costs of providing that service to us. In that process, we submitted a request at the city of Fellsmere. They in turn had a rate study completed for their hydrants, and after that study was published, they increased their per hydrant fee from $170 to $225 per hydrant. Staff received a copy of that study from the city and had some various questions and concerns about some of the assumptions in the study, and one of those addressed. We have since submitted a request to the city of Fellsmere to address these issues and have not heard back from them at this time. We also had CDM take a brief look at the study, and they had some questions as well. We've asked Fellsmere to address those. They have not. They have presented us an invoice for this year's hydrant maintenance fee, and we have challenged that and said that we don't feel we can pay that at this time. So basically, at this time, staff is requesting direction on where we want to go from here. We can do a couple of different things. We can have a consultant look at this study more in depth to address any concerns. Or one thing that we've found during our review is that our own utility provides the similar service, one maintenance visit and one hydrant flush per year at a cost of roughly $73 per hydrant, which is less than the $225 quoted by Fellsmere. And one option that could be available is we could pursue contracting with Fellsmere for our county utilities to provide those services to them at a lower cost. And the reason for that would be that we would be providing the service at a lower cost than apparently they're able to provide it if it's costing them $225 per hydrant. Those savings then get passed on to the folks that pay taxes in the Emergency Services District, which includes the city of Fellsmere and all the other municipalities in the county with the exception of Indian River Shores. So at this time, I'll open up for questions and board recommendation.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion.
Sir?
I would move that we not pay the invoice that the Board of County Commissioners employees take over the maintenance through an interlocal agreement with Fellsmere, and that I don't see why we need to hire an outside consultant. So those three things would be my motion.
Yes. Okay.
Second.
I've got a question. Mr. Brown, is the invoice going for forward, or is the invoice going for work that they've already performed?
It is for the current fiscal year. 2000. They invoice us once a year.
So it's the current fiscal year. Therefore, it is allegedly for what they've already performed.
Halfway through. We're almost 6 months into the year, so it would be almost halfway through.
We have some concerns. Anyone who has a 75% overhead factor, that's a little high. I mean, we usually don't see anything over 10. The concerns of the costs in here were, when we look at this material, I think the average trip on mileage was 10
miles.
Yeah, was 10 miles, and they're 1,000 feet apart. So
I've read the report, and it's very interesting. And I guess really my question is if they've done half of them, or if they've done half the fiscal year, what did we pay them last year? And then we could dispute from this point forward, but I think that really, with us bringing it up at this point and then all of a sudden objecting to what we're paying is as much our fault as it could be theirs.
I think we need to negotiate that with them.
Well, that's where I'm going with this.
I think the chairman's right. We ought to just offer to pay them what we paid them last year, and then follow through with the other 3 points of your motion, Commissioner Wheeler. And I'd say go ahead in that tact.
And I have one question. somebody explained to me, to me, we furnish the utilities, the water, and in that water are the fire hydrants, which provides safety to that community. I don't understand why we don't have an interlocal agreement with these communities that they provide the necessary inspections on these fire hydrants or pay us for inspecting them. It's a service we provide for the protection of their citizens, and then they're the ones that benefit from it, not the county.
Right. That is a point that we have had with this fire hydrant charge all along, is that really the people receiving city water from Fellsmere or another city, they're getting the benefit. They're getting lower home insurance premiums on their fire insurance. They're getting the benefit of having a fire hydrant, 200 feet from their house if their house catches on fire, and they have better fire protection because of that municipal water. And this is an uncommon practice to charge this. It is done elsewhere. Can likely be defended to charge it if we were to challenge the theory of charging it at all, that it should be borne on the water.
Well, I think this year we need to bring that back and take a look at it.
This year or this coming fiscal year?
This budget year coming up. I think where we are now is to solve this problem, but I really think it's a responsibility of the city to either pay us or for them to do the inspections themselves under standards set by our fire department and water department.
But you realize that's a 180 of staff's recommendation.
No, staff my motion was as set forth, but I think we need to, as a board, take a look at why we're paying them or why we're paying to maintain fire hydrants, provide all the services to the cities that we provide water to. And I think that should come back, and that should be a separate discussion. I think we should look at that.
Well, they almost need to know that to be able to start moving forward for next year's.
Well, then let's take it one at a time.
Okay. All right. Yes.
But isn't this an MSTU? I mean, we're talking about the fire hydrants. That's it, right? So wouldn't this be the MSTU?
It's in the emergency services district.
Yeah. So isn't that who pays it?
Yes.
Okay. So I mean, it seems like that's who should pay it. So this would be basically something that should go out to bid, and the lowest person gets the job.
Well,
I mean, our obligation for the MSTU is to have the best services at the cheapest cost.
But it's not an MSTU. It's a special tax.
It's an emergency services district.
Yeah.
That's that line, and only Indian River Shores does not pay our emergency services.
That's right, and we pay additional for municipalities over and above what we're paying for the county, but it's all in the same taxing district.
Yeah, my point is we ought to pay the same price for each hydrant in the taxing district and not have a profit center for Fellsmere for the hydrants in Fellsmere.
I agree.
Yeah.
And
I think we have more in common here than we have separate.
Yeah, we do.
So I think I'd like your idea, Commissioner Wheeler, if we could. Can we take care of what, versus disputing this fiscal year that we're currently in, can we get some agreement to move forward to give them some direction? I would like to see pay them what we paid them last year, and then let's start moving forward so that they have the heads up on moving forward and know the direction where we're going.
Mr. Chairman, can I make a recommendation to your point there?
Sure.
If you look at page 178 in your backup, Jason went through their charge study and corrected all the excessive charges. He reduced the overhead from 75% to 15%. He corrected their mileage rate back to the IRS approved mileage rate. In addition, they were charging us gasoline costs on top of mileage, and that should be included in your mileage rate. And he adjusted the per trip distance. And what I would recommend is Jason came up with a corrected price of $110.08 per hydrant, and I would say we pay them that fee, and then if they feel they want higher than that, they would have to justify it to us.
I'll amend my motion for that.
Okay, I'm good with that. I just don't want to,
Well, this gives us some solid basis.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jason,
I'm good with that, and I follow the logic. Okay, so we've got a motion and a second. Commissioner, read your other pieces again, please. I'm clear on the 110.08.
Well, yeah, and that's where we're at. I was going to say not pay, but we'll pay the 110.08. The other is that we start checking the hydrants, and the other is that we don't hire an outside consultant to substantiate or add a value to what we're saying. I don't think it's necessary.
Can we start checking the hydrants? Can we do that?
It would have to be with the consent of Fellsmere. We'll have to work with
I would say, so that's more like we'd offer our services at $76 per hydrant.
But the next motion we'll probably eliminate that if we bring it back and come up with a better plan.
Okay. All right, so we've got the motion, pay them $110.08, offer our services, and then renegotiate this for the upcoming fiscal year. Is that your motion, Commissioner?
Well, yeah, we can put it in. The intent is I don't know how technical we have to be, but my intent is for staff to bring back a plan where, first, it's one taxing district, and we pay in the county into that taxing district
just like they do.
And they do, but they charge more. And the point is I think the cities are benefiting from this. We pay for ours in the county. The city ought to pay theirs in the city. It's all part of the same district, but they benefit from it. The incorporated areas benefit from it. They should be paying to maintain those hydrants just like we pay to maintain our hydrants that are in the unincorporated area. It goes into a special taxing district, the emergency services district. And what they're doing is charging us for a good service that we provide to them. And I think it's inconsistent.
And I think to Commissioner Wheeler's point, what the more common practice is for the water utility to absorb that cost of maintaining the hydrants because it's a benefit to their customers, to their clients.
Does the county do that?
The county charges a fee also.
Okay, so we don't do what you're talking about.
We do.
We've reduced our fee every year. We've reduced our fee every year. What we did is we've made the conscious decision to not have it go up because we have to build new fire stations, put new fire stations online. We think our money's spent better in that way. So what we've done, even though our system has grown, we have not increased the amount that we've given the utility for maintaining them. So in other words, per hydrant, it's gone down every year.
Okay. I guess really, Commissioner, I understand what you're saying, but the reality of it is the residents everywhere in Indian River County, regardless of the municipality, unless it's Indian River Shores, pays the emergency services tax.
Correct.
And therefore, if Indian River County residents are paying for the maintenance out of that tax, it should be no different than the residents of Fellsmere. Where I do have an issue or agree with you on the issue of is the fact that they're charging nearly $100 more than what we think, than what somebody outside the Indian River County or outside the city of Fellsmere is paying. So I'm not sure where your intent was. Simply put, I think that we ought to offer our services at a $76 rate of whatever we per fire hydrant, and let's move forward.
Unless I'm missing something here, maybe I am. We pay to check our fire hydrants.
Out of which fund?
Which fund does that come out of, Joe?
Emergency Services.
Okay. So then, when we pay Fellsmere,
that comes
out of the Emergency Services District. Right. But we're paying them a premium.
$100 more, approximately.
Right. And at least, at best, it should be equal.
That's my point.
Across the board.
That's my point.
The city of Vero charges $150 per hydrant. Our own county utility charges roughly $70 per hydrant. We have decreased that, as Joe said, over time from $170 per hydrant to about $70.
They have their own water supply, do they not? The city of Vero Beach.
So does the city of Fellsmere.
Yeah.
The city of Fellsmere's got their own water.
Yeah, to some degree.
The hydrants were inspected, are they ours or the city of Fellsmere?
They're theirs. They're the city of Fellsmere.
I mean, so we almost
have
need
an
to
interconnect, but they produce their water.
You want to move forward with that with the city of Vero Beach also?
Across the board.
Yeah.
Anything within our district.
But I agree with that. I really do. That's a big motion, but I think you know where to go. All right. Was that okay with the second? Second? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Okay, thank you very much, Jason. Now we're on Public Works. Work order number 4, Coastal Technology Corporation's Upland Sand, source evaluation and permitting. Mr. Gorham, welcome. Mr. Walter, welcome.
Thank you. Jonathan Gorham, Coastal Resource Manager. This proposed work order we have today is for services related to modifying the Florida DEP permit for the Sector 3 beach restoration project to authorize an upland sand alternative. We've consulted with DEP on the level of effort and what we need to do in order to so modify the permit. Basically, what DEP would need to see from us is they need to be able to evaluate a more or less complete redesign of the entire project around any alternative sand source that we propose. The department also indicated that they feel that there's a potential that no upland sand source we proposed would be approved by them, particularly if it's significantly finer grained than the offshore material. How we proceeded in formulating this work order is we have it divided into two tasks. The second task, task 2, in this work order includes the formulation of these alternative project designs that DEP will want to see around 2 upland sand sources deemed to be the most suitable for the project, and to take those alternative designs all the way through the permit approval process. To identify the upland sand source or sources that we think would be the most suitable for the project and thus the most likely to be approved by DEP, in task 1 of the work order, we're proposing to issue a solicitation, and this work order includes the services for evaluating and ranking the potential upland sand sources that are submitted in response to this solicitation. We take the results of that solicitation process, would identify the specific sand source or sources that we'd want to proceed with in task 2. Given that we have some uncertainty expressed by DEP that any of the upland sand sources we identify would be acceptable to them for the Sector 3 project, our staff recommendation is for the authorization of only task 1 in this work order at this time. And then when we have the results and we've done the evaluation from the solicitation, we would return to you with a recommendation on proceeding with task 2.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions or comments?
Just 2 things. This was brought up at the Beach and Shore Committee last week. And Jonathan, it looks like the price for task 1 has come down quite a bit from what was initially proposed. Is that correct?
Yeah.
You guys were more near $50,000 for task 1?
In this last week, we've been working with a consultant and taking on a few more of the items under task 1 in-house, as it were. Yes.
Okay. Now, at the Beach and Shore, you did mention that DEP indicated that if we modify the permit application, it may delay the issuance of the permit by 4 months, I think you said?
Yeah, and I think we have the conference report there attached in the backup to the agenda item. They basically indicated that there's 2 paths: amending our current permit application or having the permit be issued and then a major modification of the issued permit. Both of those would probably take a similar time frame of about 4 months to process.
Okay. And then you sent out I think it was a circuit court ruling from Palm Beach County that related to a beach project. Could you just summarize that real quick, please?
Yeah, there was recently a Chapter 120 administrative hearing on a project by the town of Palm Beach, a beach restoration project. A challenge was filed by Surfrider and several other groups to the issuance of a permit for a beach restoration project. That challenge was upheld by the administrative law judge. It was basically the upholding of the challenge was based on the applicant, the town of Palm Beach, proposing to use a sand source that was finer grained than the native beach, and the potential for possible impacts. So I think there is in the department clearly a little sensitivity right now to the issues of sand characteristics in an application.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I agree with staff's recommendation to only go with the task 1, but just kind of a caveat: we need to proceed carefully that we don't jeopardize the entire project, given what happened in Palm Beach and the other costs incurred. But I think we can move forward with the task 1 and at least get the ranking done.
Got a motion from Commissioner O'Brien. Do I have a second?
Second.
A second. Okay, Commissioner Fletcher.
But I just want to to ask Jonathan something.
Go ahead.
Okay. I just want to make sure, for the record, we have this correct now. Task 1 is to move forward with $28,706 to analyze the sand value for the project. Correct?
That's correct.
And we want to analyze the sand value for the project, and the examination will be completed by March of 2010.
That is the expiration date for the entire work order in which the task 1 is contained. We would be striving to get this solicitation issued and evaluated just as soon as possible.
Okay, and there is no current funding stream for the project.
This effort in this work order was not identified in our last year's budget. Now we do have a budget for Sector 3 design and permitting. We would hope to be redirecting some money within that overall task towards this work order.
That kind of went around the question. The question was, maybe I'll ask it more direct. Is there any funding stream for the project current that would compel us to move forward with the analyzation of grains of sand for the project? I mean, why are we testing sand and going through an exorbitant amount of money, $30,000, to examine grains of sand that we will not be moving in either accord unless we find a funding stream? If we don't have a funding stream, if we have no grants, why are we going to spend taxpayer dollars examining grains of sand, and could we not do this cheaper or use another avenue in determining, perhaps maybe even you yourself going to the sites to examine the sand and taking a sample and sending it to a state lab, sending it to the DEP for examination? I trust that the DEP does have an evaluative level of the grains of sand that are necessary, although they have not shared that with us. Is that correct?
Well, I do believe I understand your question better now, and
I hope so.
What as pertains to the SOQ process, when we're evaluating the responses, the sand samples submitted under this solicitation, in the evaluation and ranking process, what we're really ranking these candidate sand samples for is how compatible they would be with the Sector 3 beach restoration design, and therefore how permittable that would be. That's why we have outside consultant services in the evaluation and ranking of the submittals, because we have a consultant that's done all the engineering and designed the project. They need to be looking at the sand samples in terms of how well sand with those characteristics would work in the project.
But so we need to direct them to spend $30,000 of taxpayer money to determine the grains of sand that we are not anticipating to use.
Well, we don't know, because this is a DEP requirement. We wish we didn't have to do this, but they're not going to issue us a permit and I think that's where we have to have it sampled. If we're going to use an upland source, DEP wants us to have it sampled and meet their specifications as part of it. Am I correct?
Well, I don't think it's quite correct to think in terms of meeting their specifications, because the DEP would consider any sand source the applicant, the county, proposes on a case-by-case basis. So you want to use this sand source, okay, you submit a project design, submit the estimated performance, the impacts to us, and then the DEP would judge whether that specific sand source is permittable. So yes, to go down the road of investigating the feasibility of using upland sand sources, we need to essentially do a series of redesigns of the project and submit those to DEP.
And Doctor, could you not secure the samples from the intended upland sources and forward them to the state for analyzation?
The state will not analyze samples that we submit. They wouldn't look at a sample and say, yes, this would meet our approval. The onus would be on the applicant to say, we're proposing to use this specific sample. Here is how it would perform in our beach projects.
So you can go to the site of the upland source and secure a qualifiable sample, and that sample could be analyzed by the applicants.
Well, what we're proposing in this solicitation is that the potential vendors, the upland sand sources, provide us with those sand samples, with the geotechnical analysis, with all the data that we would need to then have county staff and our engineering consultants rank those for which ones would be performed best in the Sector 3 beach project and thus be most likely to be permitted by DEP, and then at that point move forward with phase 2 of the work order, which is submitting this these project redesigns around these upland sand sources and asking them to approve those.
That's at $127,000 addition before we know if we're going to move forward with the project.
That's correct. And as far as I think part of the gist of your question was, we have recently found out that we don't have state cost sharing this year to construct the project this year, and that is in fact the case. However, we're applying for a permit that's good for 5 years, and our intention has still been to move forward and construct the project. And if we're looking for an alternative sand source that might in fact be more economical to do so, this is the level of effort that we need if we're going to keep that option open.
And we still don't have the money for the sand, though.
We, at this year, do not have the state grant agreement to provide 50% of the construction money. That's correct.
Don't get me wrong. I'm all in favor of moving forward, but if we can't buy it, why are we looking at it?
We have some money set aside. Do you have that?
Yes,
I have it. Can you put it up on the screen, Jason? Yeah. We have we're short in the overall project. The project is roughly a $19.7 million project. We think we've been able to narrow down, and this is pretty common with beach projects. We've got $13 million of our own money. We usually go to the state and try and have them bridge the difference. And because we didn't get the state money this year, obviously that's why we have the $6.5 million shortfall in this sector. But this is how beach renourishment projects work. You design them, you go through all the hoops, and then you try and get funding at the state level, and you hope you do.
With that being the case, Commissioner O'Brien, is the 4-month delay really that relevant?
It may not be at this point. Now, one of the things we're going to do when we go to Tallahassee, if we ever get there, is to try to talk to DEP and our legislature to put some more money back in there for that funding. And I think the more important thing with what we're dealing with right here is, if you all remember back in early March, we voted to tell staff to do this sand analysis as an attempt to keep some of the project money here in the county and not go to a dredging company. So staff is bringing back to us exactly what we asked them to do, and Jonathan's trying to present it as task 1 is, let's just get them ranked and see where they lay, and then we can still make a decision whether to proceed further. But staff is bringing back to us exactly what we voted for them to do.
Okay. Was the information available that we did not have a funding source at that time?
We've always said that we were applying for grant money to match. When we said we were in the application process, we were hoping to get it so as we could move forward. I think the intent too with this is we could do a partial project if we don't get the money, or do as much as we can, but we're not do the full project at this time.
Would that be wise though? I mean, are we going to have more monies to match later on?
Well, we obviously got to move to other sectors. You know, we're going to go from 3, then we've got 5 to do in the city, and so on the long term, we've got a lot of beach. This is just this sector.
Well, things change though, and something has changed here. We perceived that we may have had a funding source that no longer exists. Is that fair to say? So in moving forward with the examination of something that we intended to do but now are prohibited to do is a whole different game.
I think the funding source exists. I think what it is the allocation of those funds from that funding source to us is what is being stifled at this point. Commissioner Wheeler.
I'm going to throw a monkey wrench into this for a minute. I asked Jason this the other Jonathan this the other day. You know, I used to be on the chairman of that back in the 80s and all the things that went on with all this, so I'm not knowledgeable. I got a little background. You know, we've got a borrow pit or whatever you want to call it at Sebastian Inlet, where the sand flow is interrupted. It goes in, and we get that sand, and we truck it down and dump it on the beach because that's where it belongs. Now all that sand is washed down to South Beach, where we've had well over a 200-foot accretion of sand that belongs to the north, the beaches north of that. The law doesn't allow it now, and these processes move slow, but I'm just wondering why it wouldn't be feasible to scrape that beach,
what you thinking?
Move the sand back up where it belongs, instead of continuing to dump sand north and continuing to build the beach wider to the south. And we'd have to change the state laws to do that, but that might be something worth pursuing and seeing if scientifically it would work. And I know people would be upset to lose some of their beach, but that sand has come from someplace else, just like the inlet sand.
I just call it recycling. I'm with you.
So I would like, in fact, if when Peter and Bob go to Tallahassee, it might be something to add to your list to discuss and see what the feel is for it. I mean,
and I can tell you, I think that's Commissioner Solari will propose that while we're up there.
I don't know why it wouldn't work. It seems logical.
It does.
To me.
I like what you're thinking.
Mr. Chairman, when we voted back this in March, part of it was we had a lot of the local folks here that said our current model does not even allow them to even try to apply to get part of the business here locally. And this board, not even specific to Sector 3, we voted to say, let's do the analysis to find out if there is any beach project compatible sand. Okay, so whether we have the state funding from Sector 3 or not, the discussion we had back in March was we need to do something to give these guys at least a chance to compete for all those tax dollars. And that's all we're doing here, whether it's Sector 3, Sector 5, Sector 1 or 2, it's to get them available to be able to be part of a permanent submittal, and that's what we're doing.
Yes.
And I'd like to follow up on Commissioner O'Brien. Jonathan, I couldn't tell from the way you described the conversations with DEP if the thrust of the conversation was you asking DEP if upland sand would be permissible, or if you were asking DEP if we can have a commodity standard set so that we had a defined grade of sand that we could use regardless of from where we got it. They're two different things. And I thought that last time we were talking, we were trying to move towards a commodity grade of sand, which would in no way lead to a finer grade of sand being used, but rather give everybody a level playing field to provide the sand that the beach needed.
There was a topic of discussion. We asked them if there could be a set standard where sources could be pre-qualified, if you wish, and they said no, that each sand source needed to be considered in the context of the specific type of project that you were proposing to use it for. And our follow-up questions with them in these conference calls were, okay, exactly what do we need to do to move down that path where we can have a permit that will have more than one sand source in it, more than just the offshore source. What information do we need to give the agencies so that they could authorize one or more upland sand sources in the issued permit? And there was a fairly long laundry list of those things. Essentially, show us a revised project design, give us a revised estimate of environmental impacts, recalculate mitigation ratios, and it's very complicated procedure for this. So that's sort of the logic behind having a very comprehensive SOQ where we can identify one or two sand sources where we have a pretty good level of confidence that those will indeed work and be permittable to the department, and then at that time move forward with asking them to modify the application around this sand source and giving them the project redesign, engineering, and environmental information they're gonna need.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, name and address for the record, please.
Yes, Steve Smith, 1701 Highway 1A, Suite 309, Vero Beach, Florida. I guess first, to follow up Commissioner Fleischer's question, that was kind of before I even waste the board's time. Jason, those are the sources that have the 13.1 million. Those are the ones that are said to be currently available for the Section 3 project. Is that correct?
Yes, these are the local dollars. We've been told that we're not in the money for the state grants of about $9,000, but what we have set aside for local match for this is $13 million. That's all county money, with the exception of the Sebastian Inlet contribution, which they've agreed to make, of about $4.6 million. Those are currently still available without the state grant.
Okay, well, before I then jump into a full beach renourishment project, there's one thing that hasn't really been talked about here, and this is what Brevard County does every single year, and it will save probably 70% of that 19 million projected cost, probably more. And that is if we do a dune project, not a beach renourishment. We do a dune. Was it dune renourishment, Dr. Gorham? What's it called?
Restoration.
Dune restoration. I'm sorry, I can't remember that. Yeah, dune restoration, which basically with the beach renourishment, and this is what Dr. Gorham's explained to you several times, is there's two different ways of doing this. One is you do a beach renourishment. That's where you add 30, 50, 60 feet of sand beyond where the existing dune line, but 60% of that sand is in the ocean already, the mean high water line, meaning as soon as the water comes up on the next high tide, you're losing a chunk of it. Then you get the first minor little storm, you get 3-foot waves, boom, there's the rest of it. It's gone. But we're putting it all out in the ocean. By doing a dune renourishment project, you're going to use, instead of 500,000 yards of sand and having to pay for all that, you have all these nearshore reef impacts. The environmental impacts of a beach renourishment project is why the court case that we were just talking about, that's why it got kicked out. And by the way, that was offshore sand that was rejected by the court, not upland source. That was an offshore borrow pit that was rejected by the court, by the judge. Because Surfrider, which I spoke to Erica Devonta, the Surfrider chair for Florida, specifically about it. It's because the fines, which we can go into all the scientific stuff, but even the offshores, they've got a high percentage of fines, and then because it's in the water already, when they put it on the beach, the first wave that comes in, it takes it out, and where's it go? Dumps it all over all the reefs. And that's why people have problems with beach renourishment. Now, what we could do as the county is do a dune restoration project, which is what we just did at Margarisa, which is what we just did for Disney. The scrutiny level at the DEP is probably 1/10. You don't have to do all the modeling of the offshore, the reefs and the impacts of the reefs and all that, because you're not putting sand in the ocean. Also, you're probably using half of the amount of material. I mean, you'd have to do all the modeling, but just intuitively, if you think about it, and you still get the effect. You still get, instead of the shelves on the dune, the escarpments, you have, if you've gone to Marbrisa or Disney down there at Wabasso Beach, the beach is now nicely sloped and it goes back out again. We could easily do that. And that the permitting on that is you're not going to spend $500,000 in engineering, for one. You're not going to spend $19 million. I mean, 200,000 yards, you're not going to spend more than $5 million. And we've got the money for that to do it this year.
What you're saying is intriguing, and I've never quite thought of just doing
and then we don't even have to do it. Brevard does it every year, and it's an ongoing thing. To go back to what Mr. Slaughter, I think Mr. Slaughter was just talking about, where we've got, I'm sorry, Joe, Mr. Baird was talking about, we've got several projects lined up that all sections of beach that need sand. Well, if we don't spend 3 years permitting and waiting for the funds for a massive beach nourishment project, we can do these maintenance projects that are a third or a quarter of the cost. Engineering is 1/10 the cost of the material.
I think what you're having is merit, but what I really need help with is task 1, task 2, or Commissioner Wheeler's phone. And if we could.
That sounds like a classic.
And so really, I mean, of the options that's here before us today, I'm not sure that
we wouldn't even be doing task 1, task 2.
Well, and I understand that, but I'm not sure at this point, now's the time for us to change our mind and do a 180, as much as it might make sense. We could
certainly save the county $15 million.
Well, and 15,
I'm not trying to be different.
No, I'm with you. I know, I understand exactly what you're talking about, but there's more that I need to learn before I can just make that decision and do the 180. So of those, being in the industry, which one would you rather see? Task 1, only task 1 and 2? Well, give me some direction. I want to hear from you.
Well, you'd have to start with task 1, obviously, but for fear of being, because now I'm in a position where I got to state my opinions. Well, not my opinions, but I got to be more blunt maybe than it should be, because now I'm going to have to work with the same people and hope they vote for my sand. Well, it's not going to cost $29,000. Excuse me, all due respect to y'all. They've already done task 1. They handed it to us at a impromptu kind of, I don't know, what do you call it, Chuck? A pre-con type thing? I mean, we already have the list that they're saying needs to be done now. I don't know which way I'm going here. See, here's the list of what task 1 is saying that they're going to now present to us. And at the meeting, again, sorry guys, at the meeting it was kind of like, okay, we're going to put this on letterhead and hand it to you. Well, now they're coming back telling you they're going to charge the county $30,000 to give us this list. And I understand that you have to do some work, but I think Jonathan and James are very bright. They know a million times more about this stuff than I do. I mean, it's their jobs, but they could analyze the stuff because it's Munsell colors and things like that to get the basics. Now the modeling and all that, which is task 2, that's Dr. Walther's expertise. Absolutely, Coastal Tech would have to do that part because they've already started on that. Okay. I don't think it should be $30,000 to do task 1. I mean, it's essentially some paperwork. But I would vote to do task 1. And if you look at the DEP teleconference report, Bob Brantley, who's in charge up there, specifically said that Bob Brantley suggested that minimum specs be developed relative to project performance, which is what Mr. Slaughter's been talking about. That's what he was asking a moment ago. With native beach material, rather than conducting an assessment of the performance and compatibility of each borrow source individually. So it's just what you just asked, Commissioner Solari. The guy with the DEP in charge said, set the specs, and if we meet them, then we can be qualified as a potential supplier. So I would just suggest that they set some minimum specs.
And I'm with you, and we all agree upon that, but that's outside of our realm. Really, what we need to do is try to move forward with something, and if this something is task one, and we object about the price, I don't know whether it would make anybody feel better to say not to exceed $30,000, but I'm ready to move forward with something on task one then, if that's the general consensus. Commissioners?
We got a motion and a second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The motion passes. Thank you very much. To move forward with task one. Okay, next we have the survey for force main replacement at lift station 143.
Mr. Chairman, move staff recommendation.
Second.
We've got a motion to approve staff recommendation from Commissioner O'Brien, second from Commissioner Wheeler. If there's no discussion, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Survey for mitigation of Lost Tree Islands.
Move staff recommendation.
Got a motion to approve staff recommendation from Commissioner Solari and a second from Commissioner Flesher. If there's no discussion, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. That moves us down to the attorney matters, and I believe, Mr. DeBraw, could you give us the update that Commissioner Wheeler had, I believe it's Commissioner, that was requested earlier in the
Yes,
meeting?
it was at the last meeting. For the record, Bill DeBrawl, Deputy County Attorney. I had the opportunity to speak with outside counsel law firm of Policastro and LaRue. They estimate that it should be within the next 30 days that suit will be filed on the 3 resolutions of necessity that you approved last week. That would be for Bethel, Brown, and Stanbridge. They're in communication with their attorneys. They're trying to set mediation dates both in September and October. Here in Indian River County, it would be 2 dates, Monday and Tuesday back to back, so we'd probably be able to attempt to settle 4 different cases. But long and short, the next 30 days, the suit should be filed.
Okay. Any questions? Anyone? All right. Thank you very much, Mr. DeBrawl. Thank you. Okay, our next item is the approval of the minutes for the solid waste disposal district.
Approval.
Second. Got a motion to approve the January 13th meeting minutes from motion from Commissioner Wheeler, second from Commissioner Flesher. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Next, the minutes for January 20th.
Approval.
Second. Motion and second by the same movers and seconders. No discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passed unanimously. Approval of minutes for February 3rd, 2000. Thank you. Second. And the same thing again. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Item number 4, the work order for CDM Engineering Service for the annual financial reports of the General Technical Assistance.
Move approval.
Move staff recommendation from Commissioner Wheeler. I will second it and then is there any discussion, Commissioner?
Yeah.
Yes, Commissioner Solari.
I'd just like a little more information from Mr. Maida, if possible.
Okay.
Just as what the financial assurance report is and the full cost accounting report is for these matters. I've got no idea.
I'm good with that.
Good morning. Monster Method Solid Waste Disposal District. Commissioner, these are annual reports that were required by DEP. The financial assurance report, basically for long-term care, we're looking at when the landfills close, we're looking at another 20, 30 years of long-term care and monitoring. So every year we're required to put away money for that type of monitoring. So what this report does is every year what we do is we actually take an aerial survey of the landfill, look at how much capacity has been depleted in a given year, and then take a look at how much remaining life is left in there, and then go through the calculations to come up with how much money we need to put away that particular year for long-term care. The full cost accounting report is basically to inform the residents, and we do this through public notice and whatnot in the paper, for a cost of collection, management, and disposal of our solid waste in the county. And these are annual reports, and we can get copies of last year's report that will give you a little more detail on what these include.
Do they change much from year to year?
What happens is they're required by law. Unfortunately, they're required by law. They change. Yeah, actually, they do change, especially when we have the hurricanes, because you utilize a lot more of your, a lot more of your space. Also, it's a complicated formula in the fact that you've got to look at how much you think your closure costs are going to be in maintenance and how much you earned on your money that you'd already set aside. really by law, we're not required to set the cash aside. We're required to book the liability, but Indian River counties, we're conservative. We also put the cash aside so that when that date comes, that people aren't paying for a closed landfill.
Now, what I'm wondering about, the total lump sum here is $62,000, and I'm wondering how much value is added by having it basically be an audited statement as opposed to getting the information each year and then maybe having the audited statement every 3 years. Is that,
It's an annual, it's a requirement by DEP to do it annually, but...
I understand that, but I'm wondering if that's the type of thing we ought to ask the state to, again, I don't know what the difference is between just or what the total monitoring cost is as opposed to the auditing costs, but if it's significant, it may be something we could go up to Tallahassee with next year and say, listen, maybe we can make this on a 3-year cycle. If not, anyway, I'll just pose that out there right now. It's not something we're going to change this year, but I'd hate to have a substantial cost just to provide the state with some more information for one of their file drawers.
I understand.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioners. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Next, we have the status on New Planet Energy, memorandum dated March 17th, 2009. Welcome, Mr. Olson.
Good afternoon. Eric Olson, Director of Utilities. Today is a recap, or coming back to the Commission as a follow-through from a meeting we had on January 13th. Stepping back a little bit back in time, as we have discussed in the past, we did have an RFP where a selection was made to utilize the services potentially of New Planet Energy for the creation of an ethanol production facility within Indian River County. Last November 18th, we came to the Commission with an update in terms of what we believe to be 2 important criteria to determine the long-term viability of the project. The first of which was the establishment of a joint venture, and as we discussed at that time, and again today is equally valuable, the necessity of the joint venture is that INEOS, a worldwide chemical corporation, has the patent that is actually for the process itself. Without the joint venture with New Planet Energy, New Planet Energy does not have the capacity to do the project. Secondarily, because of our concern in looking at this long term, we needed to be assured that there's a long-term financial viability to this project. And the reasoning behind that, as we've discussed in the past and is still the fact today, is that as originally proposed by New Planet Energy, the process within the landfill itself would be changed. That means that much of the material that goes into the landfill would be bypassed, sent over to New Planet Energy, and therefore, as a result, the contracts that we have with the current facility operator out there, Waste Management, also with our staff, all of that would be perpetually and in the future changed. So it was very critical for us to have an understanding if, in fact, this was a viable project. What I spoke about in the past, last January 13th, is that the critical nature in terms of knowing the viability wasn't so much that we were investing some money today. The county is not investing money into this process. That's the apparent beauty of the process. The danger, the potential pitfall, if there is such a thing, is that if at some later date the project, for whatever reason, becomes non-viable, bellies up, and in the process we have to reconstitute the landfill, therein lies a dilemma. Now, we're here today to kind of give you an update status since January 13th. Where are we at today? What we have today is we have seen evidence that the joint venture has indeed occurred. The board-approved attorney, David D. out of Tallahassee, has reviewed certain information, has received some backup letters from INEOS. The joint venture is now called INPB, INEOS New Planet Biofuels, and in the process of this, it's a Delaware company that's been registered. That does not seem to be the issue at this point, although there may be some elements that David D. would want to see to confirm exactly within the status of the contract, if indeed it's as he perceives it. The real issue, and this is where we're at, if you want to call it the loggerheads or the information that we don't have, is the financial records. We believed as staff, and Jason can talk about it from his perspective, we believed that it was important to determine the financial viability of the company to see financial records. Something that indicated to us that, in fact, there is a financial capability within this entity that can actually do the project. Obviously, the project would include not only the construction of the facility, but it include the ability to maintain itself over a period of time. So, unfortunately, where we're at today is we do not have that financial information. And again, Jason here in a minute can go through some more details on this. And there's a reason behind that. INEOS is a worldwide chemical conglomerate. It's a huge chemical conglomerate, privately held firm, has a series of subsidiaries that come down underneath this. It has INEOS USA, has INEOS Bio, and ultimately it's got this new INEOS New Planet Bio, or INPB. Because it's a privately held company, their policy is that they do not divulge financial audited information as much would be the case in a publicly held company. So that information is not available as staff, which now brings us to this dilemma. What do we tell the Commission as per our direction? We do not have the information to tell you that we have the financial backup, nor do we believe we can get that information. So that puts us in a little bit of a dilemma in terms of what do we tell you. Let me take one step backwards on this thing. One of the concerns that we as staff had, as a landfill operator and as a technical component, as I mentioned, we were concerned that the process that was being proposed by INEOS, New Planet Bio, or INPB, would involve initially utilizing Class 1 or the raw landfill material. Recently, in the last week, we've had discussions with INPB, and they can talk for themselves here shortly. They propose a different approach. Same process, nothing has changed, but here's what they propose, and I'll let them describe that. They basically feel there may be better value that they utilize and focus on the brush material within the landfill first and foremost. And there's a reason, because that's what was the most tested in their pilot programs. They believe that they can get a better viability, a greater success of the project. What's the value to the county? The county's value is that there's far less liability associated with utilizing the brush. You can get a brush company to come in, you can get a brush company to leave, but the minute you change the landfill Class 1, the hill, that's a major issue. So they're going to talk about today that they have a different approach on this thing. So again, full circle, and I'll let, again, Jason be more specific on the financials. We're at a dilemma. As directed and as we propose to the Commission, we do not, nor do we perceive that we will have financial information regarding INEOS Worldwide, INEOS USA, INEOS Bio. And because INPB is a startup company, there is no history. It is what it is. So at this stage of the game, we're sort of at a little bit of a dilemma, and I think before we travel a whole lot further into discussion, I guess, Jason, you can kind of give them your perspective on the financial component of what you've seen.
But before we do that, just real quick.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Olson, looking at the liability of the county in this situation, with us not seeing their books from the inside, the only thing that appears to me that we could be jeopardizing is brush going to our landfill.
On the short term, and obviously that's an issue that's covered under contract negotiations and this sort of thing. If it were limited to the brush, simply the brush, that's the best of all worlds. Because, as I said, we can have a brush company come in, we can have a brush company go out, we don't jeopardize employees, it does have very little impact, and in fact, operating the brush system actually is a cost to us. We don't see any real revenue out of the brush part of the process over there. So there are some real benefits associated with the brush, but at some point, keep in mind that at some point, that would be for phase 1 of the project. Their intention, and they'll go into greater discussions on this thing, their intention is to move from the 7 to 8 million gallon per year production facility, ultimately to the much larger facility, phase 2, step 2, and then ultimately into the build-out, which is perhaps 70 or 80 million gallons per year. That's when they will then utilize the material from the Class 1 system. Now, potentially what you have is a period where you would look at it and say, hey, it appears to be viable. Yes, then we can move on to step 2. The key on anything you do on this thing, the county has got to be protected on the basis of contractual limits set within whatever we do or agree to. But the liability is minimized on that first phase if, in fact, they use the brush itself.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions of Mr. Olson? Yes.
So with the timing of it, they're not expected to come to that 72 million gallon or whatever the bigger plant is for some time, some years out.
That's my understanding.
In which case, as I understand it, the LLC will be set up and probably fully funded. So would we be able to, as part of our near-term negotiations, require them to show us the books of the LLC?
It's privately held.
Well, stepping back just a little bit, their sequence of events, as they stand right this minute, if the county decided to enter into a contract with no financial basis other than what you hear from them today, their first phase would be that 7 to 8 million gallon per year, and they would then have a history from that point forward. Now, once you achieve that history, then you could say, you would be, if that's what you're saying, you would have a history and say, oh, you're successful. But to get to that step one...
No, I'm saying that the LLC, the INBP, would have books. That those could be audited as part of the agreement.
Only after the project has begun.
Well, I understand, but that's still the short term.
That's
and
correct.
That would be after
correct.
That would be after their initial funding is in place.
And that's the key. In order to get to step one for this thing, I mean, let's kind of jump forward just a little bit, say 6 or 8, 9 months from now. If, in fact, in spite of the current situation with the financials, they say, we're willing to enter into a contract with the county, and the county is willing to do so, they would have to come up with the financial money to even get to step one. Right now, they don't have that. They can't show us they've even got the money to acquire the plant, even get to step one.
But that seems to be the biggest problem. From what you've described it, the county risk, if it's just brush at this time, is very, very low.
It's minimal from that point on.
And before we get any substantial risk, the LLC would be operated and funded.
That's correct. And
Okay,
you would see
that's the part of it that makes me a lot more comfortable.
Okay.
Commissioners?
Moving forward with phase one, our liability is?
Jason, are you comfortable with?
I think the concern is, I think INPB is going to want us to be able to make a commitment to not just phase one, but phase two at some point, and they'll probably be able to speak to that better, and maybe that's something that you can do contractually. However, what we were tasked with before was to look at the financial capacity. We haven't been able to determine that, what that is, because we don't have information. We have a two-pronged test, really. We'd like to see what the resources of the INEOS parent or one of the subsidiaries of that organization, because they're the patent holder. They're also the ones with the deep pockets, so we'd like to see financials on INEOS in some sort, audited financials, and then the next prong is the tie between the commitment, financial commitment of INEOS to the joint venture, which we haven't been able to see at this point in time. So we just have concerns moving forward without that financial information. If Eric says phase one, there's not a risk to us, or that's something that the board can make a decision upon. But we just do have some concerns about financial information.
Go ahead. You have a follow-up?
So your concerns are reduced on moving forward with phase one based on Eric's information?
If we can enter into a contract that will protect the interest of the county, that will set up performance benchmarks or some hoops that must be jumped through before we commit to a phase two process, that we see those financial statements, that we see certain things happening that give us a comfort level, and that could probably be handled through the contract process. I'm not an attorney, but if we could resolve these matters in a contract, that's a possibility. Just based on the direction that the board gave us before, what we're presenting today is that we're not able to make a determination on their financials because they haven't been able to share them, and it's understandable for a privately held company that they don't want to share their financials, but that's one of the hoops that we typically need somebody to jump through for us.
Mr. Fake.
this is in two phases. The first phase would be for them to come in, build the plant, take our vegetation, which would be an advantage to the landfill. Phase two would be to take the household garbage or whatever at that point, which would at that point have an effect on what our contract would be with waste management.
That's correct.
Why couldn't, or what would prevent us from having a phase one, phase two in the contract? In other words, have a certain criteria set that has to be met, like financials, after phase one is up and running, and then decide at that point that would happen. Because I see no risk at all and only advantages to the county right now, because they're going to spend millions of dollars to build the plant. They're going to be hiring construction workers. When the plant opens, they're going to hire, I heard 124 to 130 people, and they're going to be taking vegetation out of the landfill. So I think if that's all done and completed in phase one, I think phase two basically would be a no-brainer other than the financials, and by that time they're going to be established, and you could have some type of a criteria put in that this has to be met before we move into phase two to protect it.
And you are right. The phase two is real. That's the most dangerous step. One of the things that you've got to take into consideration, staff amongst ourselves, we've sort of kidded even the INEOS team here, and we're sort of the stick in the mud, if you will. Our position has been to give you a worst-case scenario. That is our obligation. We've expressed concerns regarding financial, but you are correct that this first step could in fact be entered into with minimal risk, subject to if in fact a contractual process was put into place that protected the county at this point. But again, just to kind of keep back to the same point, we can't come to you today and tell you, gee, we're very certain that the financial foothold of this company is there, it's going to make all the success in the world. We can't express our personal beliefs associated with that aspect, so that's kind of
where I'm coming from. I really don't see any risk, and maybe I'm missing something, but I don't see any risk to the county at all. I mean, even if they move into phase two, we get the financials, and they move into phase two and it doesn't work, so at some point in time we've got to either run the landfill ourselves or renegotiate another contract. But I think it's worth the risk for the potential that's offered here with construction jobs, with jobs in the plant, plus the fact it's green. It's got a lot of positives to it, and I think it's worth stepping forward and making the risk to see this happen.
Commissioners, any other questions?
I'm ready to move forward with a two-phase adoption.
Okay. All right.
Did y'all want to hear from?
It might be useful to hear from INEOS just to tell us what their side of what they can do to put us at ease.
Don't say anything would change any of the votes I hear.
I hope not.
Welcome. Name and address for the record, please.
My name is David King, and I've recently been appointed as the managing director for INEOS New Planet Bioenergy, and that is the name of the joint venture that was created that Eric referred to earlier. My address is 4107 Deltawood Court in Houston, Texas. Good morning, commissioners, and thank you for the opportunity to be able to talk to you today as a representative of INEOS. I know that you know my colleagues, Ray Krabs and Tex Carter from New Planet Energy. I'd also like to introduce Dan Cummings, who's recently been appointed the commercial manager for the Americas as part of INEOS Bio, of which INPB is a subsidiary. I'd also like to thank staff, because we've had a very open dialogue as we've moved through this. They've been very generous with their schedule and with their time in terms of trying to get to a solution. Unfortunately, in the compressed time frame that I've had since joining, we just haven't been able to get there and tie it all off. The interesting thing here is that we're actually closely aligned, and I would even say in heated agreement, that we need to establish a comfort level with the commissioners and with staff in order to provide confidence that we can do this project. And I think we're in heated agreement there. The fact of the matter is, we need the advocacy of the commissioners, of the staff, and ultimately of the public in order to create the win-win proposition that we think that this project can provide. Eric did a very good job of explaining where we're at in the process. I'd like to add a couple of details, perhaps. As you know, this is a waste to liquid fuel in the form of ethanol plus electricity project. We've been at this for about 18 years. in one fashion or another. We've had a pilot plant operating for 5 years. For the most part, the majority of the material has been on vegetative waste, which is what Eric mentioned before. But we have done some work with MSW, and in fact, we've talked to Himanshu Mehta about getting some samples to run of the Indian River County MSW at our pilot facility. Don't anticipate problems, but there is it's part of the technology development curve, if you will. Each of the elements of the technology, the gasifier, the fermenter, and the ethanol, are all used commercially at very large scale. This is a matter of tying together, optimizing the process, and coming out with the right product mix. So we have a high level of confidence, but it is new technology. We have, since the last time that the council met, and actually since I've joined, is we have made some very significant progress in terms of seeking financing. We've submitted the DOE loan application under Title 17. We did that in February, and we're presently in preparation of the Section 932 DOE grant for bioenergy refineries, and we'll be submitting that in April. We also have funding in the form of a grant from the state of Florida. So we've been able to we've been successful on all those fronts. In terms of the project itself, I want to be clear in terms of the phases we're talking about. The first phase is an 8 million gallon per year, plus or minus 8 million gallon per year facility, 3 megawatts of power, and we anticipate completing that in 2011. The second phase is an additional 42 million, so a total plant capacity of 50 million that will produce roughly 9 to 10 megawatts of power, and we look to complete that in 2013. So that's sort of the delineation of the phases. As we go through this, it becomes increasingly imperative that we land the site that we're going to make this. And the reason I say that is that we have got a very disciplined capital project process, as I suspect you would imagine, for a project this large and with the technology this significant. And we have a stage gate process, and at each point we question ourselves, we identify problems, we identify resolution, and we move through that. We have invested, the two partners, about $1 million each on the engineering aspects of the project. So we have spent, not a commitment, but we've actually spent about $1 million on the engineering, on the property development, and the business development. So roughly $2 million to date, and we have been ramping up in anticipation of going through with the project since the beginning of the year. So as we go through the stage gate process, we want to make sure we're making the right decisions all along, and I think that helps protect INPB, but it also helps your interest in terms of making sure that we have a successful project as well. So we have been moving through that activity as we've gone through it. We've also have a property under contract, which I believe you're aware of, and we're working through the closure on that as well. And we've also been working on the business development side of it. So all phases of the project are coming together as we move forward. The dilemma, as Eric mentioned, is that we have not been able to provide the financials that the staff group would be comfortable with. And I won't go into the details in terms of the various things that we have tried, but I can tell you, working with Jason over the past 2 weeks, we've tried a number of ways in order to establish that comfort level with staff. I want to address a comment that Commissioner Solari made earlier, because it's important as we go through. We're not looking to build an 8 million gallon plant here. We're looking to build a 50 million gallon facility, and perhaps beyond, based on the environment, the economics, etc. But certainly our view is the long term. Even with that view, as we go forward, we want to make sure that we have the protection of our financial information going forward. And so I would like to put forward that we would like to work towards a process that ensures the protection of our financial information as a private company, because it's going to be important for our business plan and the competitive environment that's out there going forward, but perhaps we don't have to do it under the compressed time frame that we've had to this point. It's in our interest for the commissioners and for the staff organization to be comfortable with our financials, as it is for us and the people that I report to, as you can well imagine. So the proposal on the table, which is to look at a phase one, which I think meets our stage gate process, as I alluded to earlier, in terms of using the vegetative waste, I think that it minimizes the risk that the county takes on. It is well-known technology from our pilot plant, but in fact, we will be using that as a demonstration unit, obviously, to carry forward with the MSW. And the interesting thing about the technology that we have designed is it's very modular, so that we will be able to have a repetitive, consistent operation which we can just multiply for ourselves or for other licensees as we go through this. So this 8 million gallon is certainly a commercial unit, but it's also a demonstration unit. So we will be using the MSW. We'll have a higher technical confidence. We will be able to establish a track record in terms of the financials on the project and the economics of the project. Meanwhile, as was mentioned earlier, we'll be employing people in the area. We'll be part of the tax base. We hope to become part of the community. So a lot of that plays into the strategy that was proposed earlier. However, I think one of the ways to address the issue of financial protection is to look or consider ways that we could be covered under an economic development project, and therefore we would have we would protect it under the rules that are implicit in that within IRC in the state of Florida.
And that would be unlike what we just went through with Piper? Would that be something similar to that?
Right. That's one thing that I think we could explore. We'd have to get the sign off from the attorney's office that could work. But if we could get that confidentiality, I think INEOS has indicated that they're willing to share that information with us. That would help because I just feel like I have to reiterate my status as a stick in the mud, as Eric eloquently put before. We require nonprofit agencies that we give $25,000 or more to provide us an audited financial statement. Now, granted, they're not going to be as concerned about the privacy of their information as INEOS is going to be, but we hold them to that standard. If you're a mom and pop operation that wants to do business with us, with the county, or provide a service to our residents, we want to see some more financial statements. If you want to build a road for us, that maybe you're a company that's built 200 major road projects before, we require you to submit us financial statements. And this is a process that we think is a very positive thing, would be a positive development for the county, but it's never done before on a commercial basis. I just have concerns about the financial matters. Right now is a good time to be moving forward for green initiatives and environmentally friendly things. However, I can't overlook the difficulty that I think anybody's going to face in this financial market raising capital. So I just want to state that. But if we could get them to fit into that economic development, which I think they would if they're going to provide maybe over 100 employees, then I think that maybe we could get them into that economic development spot if we could get to fit them into that hole and hold their information confidential.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Let's take the worst case scenario. Let's suppose that they buy the property out here they're looking at, and they get halfway through building the plant, and we have a contract with them to start off with the vegetation, and let's say that it doesn't work. Let's say they don't even complete the plant. What has the county lost?
I think Eric would have to address that because he could really answer that more eloquently.
Well, I think as I mentioned earlier, basically very low at that point because literally we would have invested nothing. We would have changed nothing within the process. We would have jeopardized nothing with the contract with Waste Management. So very, very low.
Well, and that's what I say. I don't see any downside to this until they get to the point where they've proven themselves. So I see low risk and high potential payback to the community with tax base, jobs, and plus the industry being, if they're going to use it as a model or for training for other plants, I think I see a plus for that with people coming and going. I see an awful lot of up, and at this point I don't see any down. To the county. I mean, if they're here 18 months and they don't get underway because of they can't raise capital, it's of no loss to us. I mean, we've got worse projects than that set and empty that they're going to build houses in, now they're deserts.
Yeah, the key to everything would be on any sort of a legal contract you put together on that, to build the protections in it.
Well, you have to, yeah.
If you don't have that, you have nothing.
Yeah. Sure.
Commissioner Fletcher.
I think the only risk here is mulch.
Right.
There is no other risk, and I'll tell you, with all of the gains that we're looking forward to, I believe that the applicant is also underselling the amount of financial impact that we are going to receive in this county when they do get to phase 2. But they cannot get to phase 2 without phase 1.
That's correct.
So I'd like to make a motion to go forward with Phase 1 of this project.
And I'll second that, and I think that the risk is, at least as I read it, the risk is so minimal to a potential really positive outcome. And I'm willing to say or politically take that risk.
Mr. Chairman, just, I'd like to see that motion expanded a little bit and direct Jason and INEOS to come up with some contract specifications that if they meet those specifications, they can proceed with Phase 2.
That gives them the comfort.
They need to have that, knowing that if we perform as you guys ask, then the county will step forward and move forward with Phase 2. And I think it's important that they get that.
Put certain criteria in it.
Well, Jason and David will get together and either be through the economic development protection or even, a private attorney with confidentiality. You guys can work that out to Jason's satisfaction, and that'll be in the contract. So if you guys meet those standards and Jason signs off, then we move forward with Phase 2.
Commissioner Fletcher, you good with that?
That was all assumed and well understood when I said we would want to get to Phase 2, so we need to get to Phase 1, and that those legal questions were already answered. Thank you.
Ms. Kesseltine.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. For the record, I'm still Helene Castletine, Economic Development Director with the Indian River County Chamber of Commerce. And I'd like to reiterate the suggestion made by David and by Jason that this be considered an economic development project. From day one, our Economic Development Office has considered this an economic development project. We have respected their request to keep certain information confidential that they have told us, but we've not made public as yet. And I believe you all have done the same. So with that, as an economic development project, if we've worked with these before, either from Enterprise Florida or direct leads that came to us, where we held certain information confidentially because of contract negotiations, competitiveness, whatever it might be. This is one overall big project. It's going to create, as Commissioner Wheeler suggested, about 125 new jobs for county residents, millions of dollars in capital investment. This is an economic development project, no doubt about it, in our minds anyway. We've always treated it as such. So I think with that, certainly the state looks at economic development projects with a different eye, in that you can maintain that confidentiality during contract negotiations.
Commissioners, any other questions before we proceed to vote? Seeing none, all those...
I just want to make one comment before we vote. I want to also applaud Jason and Eric. Their actual backup was actually very well written, and I think that they implemented what we had said at the last meeting very, very well.
Especially for
I think the board is going in exactly the right direction, but I don't want to leave with the feeling that staff didn't do exactly what they were supposed to. I thought that was one of the best written pieces of backup that I've read in a while, and that it gave me the information as a commissioner to ask the right questions. So, good. Just want to applaud staff for doing what I thought was a very good job with this matter. And they've started from the beginning. They've done a good job. They've continued to do a good job. I applaud their work and their work with the joint venture.
Okay. Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Congratulations, gentlemen. Let's move forward with Phase 1.
Thank you for your time.
And I guess I better adjourn the meeting. I'm just sitting by myself. I now declare this meeting adjourned.